So before we get into any of the homework that was turned in or what we're going to do today, well, actually it is what we're going to do in part today. I want to talk about final project for this class. It's just time to start thinking more seriously about it. This is our 5th week. We're a third of the way. We're actually a third of the way through. It's hard to believe, but it's a beautiful day out. So I know we all want to just be outside, right? Anyway, so sorry. Anyway, so I'm going to start about just just kind of plant the seeds about final project. I'm going to show you some final project pieces that were turned in previous versions of this class. So anyway, that's kind of what I want to do right now. So I'm going to start here. Both of these PDFs are in our session 1. So if you take a look at the session 1 resources on our Canvas site, they're in there. If you take a look in your session 1 folder, there's a subfolder in there called PDFs. These same two things are in there. When it comes time for the actual beginning of this assignment, because in a couple of weeks, you're going to have to do a written kind of idea about what you think you're going to do. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But all of that part's in there. If for some reason you cannot find this stuff, just shoot me an email. I'll send you a copy. But it's kind of all over our Canvas site and also all over your the folders that you downloaded on the very first class that we had. So at any rate, your final project so this is just kind of a description of what you should be thinking of. It's an integration of your technical skill in Photoshop with your intellectual and conceptual creativity. You must come to your final critique prepared to defend your technical and creative decisions both. This is not strictly a technical exercise or strictly a creative exercise. It's a marriage of both. You'll be judged on blah, blah, blah. You get that. So you're going to do a proposal for this class. I'm going to show you the proposal in just a second. It's 2 paragraphs. That's all it is. It's not some daunting thesis thing that you need to do. So don't flip out about this yet. In your proposal, you need to state what ideas you hope to address for your project. For example, if it's an advertising project, what's the ad campaign and how will your work support the branding? The second part of so anyway, there's 2 paragraphs. We'll look at that in just a second. The number of images for the final project will be determined on the complexity of the work. So in most cases, I would say a minimum of 5 images is expected. However, if you show up with 5 images and you've done a little bit of light retouching here and there, and that's really about it, you need to ask yourself, is that really a final? So what I always say, because this comes up every single semester, and I just say to people, you guys know what a final is. You know how much work it takes, you know what's involved, you know all of that stuff. So you know what you need to show up with. Now, if there's any question about that, or you're insecure about that, or somehow you want my seal of approval or stamp or whatever, I'm more than happy to talk with you about this all along the way. So at the sort of the last 4 or 5 of our classes, we will be looking at final project work throughout that we'll be looking at working files for the last third of this semester. So you're going to get feedback. You're going to have some idea of what's going on, but don't hesitate to reach out if you somehow don't feel like you're comfortable in what you're actually doing or how much of it you are doing. You do not need to mat your final project. Believe it or not, you guys would never know this, but it used to be here at Columbia College that every single final project had to be matted. No exception. Yeah, I know. They're long gone days. Anyway, the final project has to be printed out. You also need to have the before source images. So again, pretty much like a retouching portfolio would be, there's kind of the befores and afters. Because if you just put up your retouching on the wall in your final prints and it's done really well, in theory it should look like you haven't done anything. So we need the before prints to actually really be able to gauge what work you did, what did you change, what did you modify, what did you add, what did you subtract, all that. You guys, that makes sense, right? Your before prints do not need to be all pretty, and they don't need to be giant. They don't need to be, your befores, the afters need to be well done. But the befores, I always encourage people to do this. So I'm just going to throw this out here. I made a living doing before and after pictures for magazines for beauty. And I was shocked how long it took me to realize is that it made sense to make the befores look worse. So you can actually push these in both directions. You want to push your after stuff to make it look really good, but you might want to make your before stuff look worse than it was when you actually shot it, because then it just, again, the contrast between the two makes sense. So at any rate, the final project proposal itself is right here. It's just 2 paragraphs. So the first paragraph is the conceptual part of your proposal. So brief project statement about the idea that you're planning to explore in your project. So I want to do fashion, I want to do beauty, I want to do food, I want to do landscapes, I want to do a mix. So I'm telling everybody this right now. You do not have to show up with something that is like a cohesive project. You could come in with one landscape picture, one food picture, one beauty shot, one fashion shot, one portrait, whatever it is. That's the collective part of it is not what I'm looking for. What I am looking for, though, and I think that this part is really critical, and this is the part I really want you guys to think about. I don't want you to do this just as a pure exercise to get a grade and retouching. I want you to do this for your own work. I want you to do this for your portfolio. I want you to work on that kind of work. It doesn't help you out to just do something to get a grade in this class and move on. How does this apply to your work? And what in your work can you actually make better? So some of the skills will apply to this, not all of them will. I'm not looking for all of them, but I am desperately hoping that you guys apply this to your portfolio. You're getting ready to graduate from here. That portfolio is your ticket out. So anyway, does that sort of make sense, everybody? That's what I'm hoping will happen in here. So then paragraph 2 is how you're really going to pull this off, right? Are you going to be shooting this in the studio? Are you using old work? Is this what your plan is? Is that what, that's just so does that make sense what's going on here? So it's relatively simple to do. It's listed in our Canvas site as an assignment. Here, we can find it right now. So it is this week. It's when it starts. There you go. So it looks like you have 2 weeks you have 1 week to do this. So if you click on the written final project proposal, this is exactly what I just showed you. Just read through this, basically what I'm looking for, and this will be due next week. Now, what I will say about this is that this is your first stab at this. If over the course of the semester you decide you want to do something completely different, that's fine. I'm not going to hold you to what you put down in this, but I do need, the reason I've got this so front early in the semester is that I really want you to be thinking about this. I really want to give you time to let this evolve into something that, again, is meaningful to your work that you could then go use to go out and get a job. That simple. Are there questions about this? Okay. So I do want to show you some examples of work from the past. I'm going to do it mostly up here on this screen right here. I'm not going to open all this up. We don't have time to do all of this. But this was a guy named Alex Mortel a couple of years ago. He was really just interested in modifying and building these sort of like building landscapes. So you'll see he's like removed all the windows from buildings and he's treating them more as sort of texture and form and shape, really flattened this out. So even though this is, you would think would have dimension, they're incredibly flat, like very Japanese printy kind of like. So at any rate, Austin took a different approach on his. In his case, he built these buildings out of buildings. So, and then he dropped them into these landscapes. So none of this is real. So the buildings are completely created, and then the landscapes where he's composited them into. The landscapes are real, but the buildings themselves weren't there. This one I thought was a little bit illustratively hokey. But this one I thought was actually beautifully done. So anyway, and it was a whole commentary on the industrial dehumanization wasteland. So Sean and his stuff, he did sort of more conventional green screen fashion beauty kind of stuff. So I'm going to show you just a couple of them really quickly. Some of them are green screen, some of them he actually shot on white. So this is the figure that he did in the studio, and this is the space that he actually put it into. This one I thought was actually extremely well done. So this again was his attempt at knocking stuff out in the studio and the space that he put it into. And actually this one I thought had a lot going for it as well. So this was his location. This is his knockout part. And in this case, not using green screen was a little bit probably a smart idea, simply because he was putting it on a background that already had white in it. And then he ultimately added clouds to it. So basically, again, compositing. In this class, we will, it happens around, I think, week 10 or 11. We will meet at the photo studio and go over how to set up green screen and actually shoot it. I try to get that early enough in the game that if it is something that you're thinking about using, that you have the skill set to do that. We're going to be knocking out green screen stuff. Actually, as a matter of fact, today we're going to start with knocking out green screen stuff. The mechanics of it, the Photoshop parts of it all, but the actual setting it up and shooting it to get the to really have your lighting setup in your studio setup work for you is something that we'll tackle a little bit later. So, Devin, this ended up being like the most complicated composite that was ever done in any one of these classes. So, Devin had this idea, and he was a person who was really, he was incredibly meticulous about all of his stuff. So he actually had there was a fire station that was near his house, and he walked over and said, I've got this idea for this picture. Will you let me shoot the interior of your ambulance or your EMT car or whatever it is? And they're like, sure. So he shot it, but then he actually measured everything out in this thing. So he knew how high his camera was in this car. He had everything so that he could then go into the studio and recreate this scenario to then put the people in. But all of these people are shot individually. So the people are all shot individually. The guy in the middle, the patient in the middle, that's all shot. Every one of those was shot actually in the studio. Unfortunately, I don't have the befores for this, but it was just insane. So having somebody put an arm around somebody and they're shot at 2 different times, that's no easy trick. You're going to learn how to do all this kind of stuff. So at any rate, that was Devin. Some of these actually start to be more, well, they're just taking on I don't know, maybe a more fine art bent on this. Again, I'm not really entirely certain how I would see this being applied. Photo illustration, possibly album cover, obviously. Things like that. Postery film, maybe, that kind of stuff. Nonetheless, there was some interesting stuff in here. I thought he captured the mood of part of this pretty well. He matched up his compositing part here pretty well. So I thought that was actually pretty well done. But you can see this is not inherently just a fashion photograph thing. And that's one of the things that I want to stress in this, is that this is not a fashion and beauty class. So even though a lot of the examples that we're working on lean that way, it's the only reason they lean that way is because they're my pictures and that's what I do. But I still argue that you can take all the skills that we learn in this class and apply it to other things like this. So Haley was really interested in shooting food, and so this was her take on, this was her final project. And you can see, it's a solid idea. Could it be executed better? Always, but still strong enough to actually show you guys. So you guys know the big moose on the side of the building? That's Jacob Watts. He was actually in this class. He was really interested in exploring the impact of war on children. And he wanted to really illustrate that. He wanted to do a series of images that really explored his feeling about that. But also, he was really interested in doing stuff that could be used in, I don't want to call it propaganda, but to be used as like posters and that sort of thing. So you'll see that a lot of his work ends up being, some of it directly addresses the kid part of it. I'll show you some images in just a second. But anyway, this is what he was interested in doing. This is what he was interested in exploring here. I thought this was actually a pretty compelling image. This, so you can sort of see in all of this, there's not, clearly this is not fashion, this is not food. This is now more about, again, somebody's take on a political issue, on a social issue that was extremely important to him, and he explored it using stuff that he had actually done here in this class. So that's Jacob. So Jeff ended up doing, these were actually all, it's very MC Escher kind of thing. It's these impossible perspectives. When you look at it, they're things that could not happen. But he generated them all. So he created, like this one, he actually he shot pictures of grass, and then he built these geometric objects and then laid those textures into them. But then he did it in such a way, and he lit them. If you take a look at the lighting on this, it helps really add to the confusion of the impossible perspective part of it all. But they were incredibly well done. He did a whole series of these things, and I did not see this one coming. So again, you can see nothing that really has anything to do with fashion beauty. Jeff's, this was actually, it's really hard to sort of entirely explain this, but I'm going to try. So what Jeff did on this was that he, here I'm going to actually open this one up, because this one was actually I thought the star of the show. So what he did was he took these panels of foam core that were about the size of, they were about like this, so what would we call that, 24 by 36, something like that, something about like that. And then he cut them and folded them to build them into forms. So that's what you're seeing here. But then he took these photographs and he actually digitally cut the photographs apart and laid them into this form that he had built. But then he had to relight the photograph so that it was no longer the lighting just of the photograph, but it actually became the lighting of the sculpture piece that he was doing. You cannot begin to imagine how complicated this was. And it took him 5 or 6 weeks to actually do this. Yeah, I know. Do you ever feel like Adobe owns you and it's not the other way around? Right? There's something so inherently wrong with that. Anyway. But yeah, and these were incredible. These were they were stunning, and then he printed them life size for the piece of the foam core that he'd actually cut up. They were stunning. They were absolutely stunning. Just a few more to show you, and then we will jump into. So. You see a lot of this stuff. Actually, I didn't mean to open that one, so let me close all these up and go back to this. So I don't want to say it's a predictable thing, but a lot of people explore. I mean, you'll see a lot of photographers explore the same kind of idea. They're landscapes that are shot over a span of time, and they were meant to look like they span time. So the one that I think is probably the more successful of them would be something like this. So you can clearly see daytime on this right side of the image and nighttime on the left side of the image. Some of these, you need to get it pointed out a little bit more to you. It becomes a little bit more obvious. When they're scaled this small, it's sometimes hard to sort of see that part. But I thought he did a really good job of actually marrying these two things together. Yeah, I thought they were well done. So I'm going to open up both of these, because I have the befores and afters, but they're inside the file. So I just want to show these to you. So Columbia College used to own the Johnson's Publishing building that's now a boutique hotel on Michigan Avenue. It's that really fascist-looking brutalist building that's like between 9th or right around 9th on the west side. Well, anyway, Columbia used to own it, and again, it was Johnson's Publishing, so it was people who it was Ebony. I mean, it was that publishing company, incredibly famous here in Chicago. So anyway, she went in and shot these pictures in that space, and I just want to show you what she did. So when you take a look at this is why I say the befores matter in this, because when you take a look at this, you'll say, well, what's the big deal, right? Until you take a look at where she started, and this is what she started with. So she starts with the building. This was actually the publisher's, the president of it. This was his office, I think. But at any rate, if you take a look at it right now, you'll see that there's lights out in the building. So she turns the lights on, and then balances it, and then creates light falling down on the side. All of this is done in post. These lights don't exist. But the real marvel of this, I thought, I'm going to go to this corner up here. This is an office that had glass walls. And you can see that this glass wall, the curve of this wall has actually popped completely out. She actually pops it back in and then adds all the reflections I mean, it's just mind-boggling how she did this. I have no clue how she did this. Well, actually, I do know how she did it, but nonetheless, again, like I say, you look at this and you go, oh, what's the big deal? It was massively well done. And then she has one other that I want to show you really quickly. And this one as well, you look at it and you'll say, well, really, what's the whole big deal about it? And I'm going to show you the before again as well. And to do this kind of work, to actually go in and match pattern like this is stunningly difficult to do. If you ever are faced with having to do fabric like this, hang on one second. You know how challenging this actually is. But she doesn't just end at that part right there. You'll see she doesn't bother to actually pick any of the stuff up off the floor or whatever. She is going to retouch all of that out. But that means she has not only got to retouch this out, but if you take a look at the carpet, she's got to replace this carpet, but she has to do it in perspective. So this is not just a conventional cloning. As she's cloning this stuff to get rid of those things that are laying on the floor, the pattern on the rug gets narrower as it starts to go further away from the camera. So this is not just a typical clone stamp thing. This is clone stamping in perspective. It's insane. It's insane. Take a look. I'm going to show you her layer stack really quickly. So this is what I say about how many pictures do I really need? Well, if you take a look at what she actually did, this is where it starts. Let me scooch this over just a little bit. We're going to go to the next part here, is a transforming part. Then this is the carpet part that she did. Look at her layer stack. This is just inside the carpet group right here. There's nested parts inside of the carpet group right here. And this just goes on and on and on. So when I look at this You tell me. And that's just the carpet. I mean, she has hundreds and hundreds of layers in here. So when I look at that, it's very hard for me to say, oh, you only turned in 3 of these, I said 5, whatever. I mean, she spent weeks doing these things. So anyway, almost done. Just a couple more to show you really quickly, and then we will jump out. So this is more in the kind of fashion realm, but when you take a look at it and you realize what's really sort of like going on in all of this, it's hard to really see it, so I'll just try to walk you through it. The set on this is real. He actually got together with a set designer and they built this set, but then the relighting and the modification of the body and all of that kind of stuff was all done in post. And the two of them, the way they ended up fitting together and marrying together, these were really, really exceptionally well done. Took everybody by surprise. I mean, the stuff was just nuts. So I'm going to show you 2 more. So this was more the conventional beauty shot kind of stuff, whatever. But I'm going to show you again the before and after part here, just to give you some idea. And again, look at this layer stack in here. I mean, this is not any, yeah, I'm going to do a little tonal retouching on her face. This is where it started. And this is what he did. And Tim will be the last. I'll show you 2 more. Tim will be the last one. So Tim actually has a company here in Chicago. He had a really clever idea. I don't think it's original, but a very clever idea. He wanted to start out as a photo assistant, a digital tech, all that kind of stuff. I mean, sort of the classic, what I hope you guys are thinking about doing, regardless of what you want to shoot. It's just the way to stay in the game. But he also he was really interested in doing retouching, so he combined the 2 together. And so for his company, what happens is he will tech on a photo shoot, but he also functions as the retoucher on set, so that he can say to the photographer, hey, if you shoot this bottle, just move it over here and tilt it like this. It'll be a whole lot easier for me than to retouch that into our composite. Or let's just light this way for this one. So anyway, he functions as a retoucher on set, and he bills for it all. So he's billing $500 a day as a tech, but $500 a day as a retoucher. So he's billing $1,000 a day. And then he does the retouching afterwards, and he bills for that. So he's really involved in the advertising people world. That's who he works for. His company's called Slick Digital. He's doing really well. But again, look at his whole layer group. I'll show you his before and after really quick. Yeah.
Why does she not have an arm in the original?
In the original, it's actually, you'll see, this is not a smart object, so it's not the raw file based on it. So clearly he has made a mistake and done something destructive on this, but he knew he was changing it anyway, so it didn't really matter. But yeah. Crazy, huh? And the last couple that I'll show you, just because I want, again, everybody to realize that there's so much that this can apply to other people. There's 2 of them. Sorry, I lied. So Terry was really interested in shooting cars, and so he was he had these cars that he could get his hands on, and he actually put them into these locations around Chicago. And I thought that they were just This whole thing was extremely well done. I'm not so sure about the motion car part of it, so much, but nonetheless. But then when you realize that also this is a model car, it's this big. Yeah. It's so well done. He had a whole series of these. They were so well done. He actually got a gig. So the people where he was trying to get the real car, and there's garages around Chicago where you can, if you have like really expensive cars, whatever, they store them for you, that kind of thing. And he tried to approach some of them to actually get real cars, and none of them would, they all said, no, you're too young, no, we're not going to, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. He did these model car pictures and showed it to them, and they all got him to shoot their cars. Yeah. And then his visa ran out and he had to go back to India. The last one I'll show you is this. So Harith did all of these pictures. Harith was Palestinian, and he did all of these pictures of himself in places that he as a Palestinian was not allowed to go. And he printed them just like postcards. So these are now these 4x6 postcards, and if you flipped them over, on the back was the little address line and the little place for the stamp and the whole thing. It was this whole thing of like these touristy pictures, right? But it was all about, for him, the places that he and his family wasn't allowed to actually be, and then he treated it like these touristy postcard things. And it was just the whole commentary was incredibly clever. So again, pretty much like Jacob, this was really motivated by political activism, for lack of a better way of putting it. And anyway, they were really incredibly well done, very well thought out. So are there any questions about kind of the direction that I want you guys to go for thinking about this? Is this making sense? Anyone? No one? Yes.
Are these all undergraduate students you had?
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually only one graduate student in here. I'll show you his work really quickly. I was debating whether to show you this one, but yeah. What's Kai's last name? Do you remember? Oh, there it was. So Kai was really into doing, this may be a layered one. I'm not sure. I'll check to see if it is. A lot of the stuff when I first started collecting these, I was only getting flattened images because we were only looking at prints anyway. So there wasn't, anyway. So I lost a lot of the before and after part, and I'm hoping that this has got the before part in it. Yeah, it does. Anyway, he was a grad student here, and he was really interested in doing architectural landscape work. And so this is where he started. And that's where he ended. I'm sure to the horror of all of his graduate advisors here that he actually, But anyway, the shit was beautiful. I mean, and he, again, another person that when you're building a lawn like this, you're retouching all of this in perspective. So it's just, it's insane. Anyway, okay, enough of that. Next thing we're going to look at is just a couple of examples of stuff that got turned in for the Sunny assignment. And then we are actually going to do the Sunny assignment all together here in class. So I'm going to blow through this pretty quickly. One thing I want to point out here just on my notes, I just want to reiterate the late assignment policy in this class. You have 1 week to get something in late, right? So if something was due today, you have, and you get it turned in today, it'll be graded, not late. If you get it in before our class next week, it'll be a single grade letter, knock off. That's the penalty for being late that week. Anything after that, you just get a 0. The zeros will take you down pretty quick. So just be aware of that. Do not get caught up into all of this. But the other important thing about all of this is that every skill that we get in this class builds. And so the stuff that we go over today, you're going to need for next week. And the stuff that we go over next week, you're going to need for the week after. I mean, it's just this build of skills. And if somehow you don't catch one, or you miss one, or you somehow don't get it, whatever it is, that puts a hole in what's going to happen for the whole rest of the assignments that you're trying to complete. And so don't let that happen. Again, I have office hours. I'm willing to meet with you guys outside of class. I'm willing to do all of that to get you through this, but you have got to approach me if you're falling behind or you don't get something in or whatever it is. Some of you already are, so I'm not saying that you're not. Anyway. So take a look at eyes really quickly. Again, unfortunately, it's just because you're early in the alphabet. So when I open these up, I usually turn off the background one and I turn everybody else back on to take a look at what the completion of the whole group is. And so you can see here, it's the challenge that everyone faced, is where the most challenging part of this whole assignment is this edge right here, where the hair actually meets the skin. That's by design. We'll see how well we get it done today. I've done this with every single class. I told you that before. I have better days with this than others, so we'll see how well I do today. But it wasn't ever meant to be. I guess what I'm trying to say is, in thinking about this, it's meant to be challenging. To actually separate the girl from the background on the other side is not that hard to do. To separate the sweater is just not that hard to do. So it's sort of different challenges with different strategies to do different things. And so we're going to explore that today, and hopefully you'll get a sense of all of those strategies. And that's what I'm going to try to get done today. But what I wanted to point out was this, because this is something that happened to everyone if you did it right. It's, why do you have this white line that exists right here? Why is this actually happening? This is what I call the dovetailing problem. Again, we're going to take a look at how this really works and why this happens, but everybody who did this probably felt like this was a mistake. It's not. This is how Photoshop works. This is how Photoshop is designed to work. Now, you can argue with that, and you can try to go in and mitigate parts of this, but I'm going to show you why this happens and why nobody got dinged for this. Nobody got dinged for having this dovetail issue here. Because if you did it right, I expected to see this. So, for what it's worth, we'll get to that in just a second. I've got an exercise where you really see why this whole thing happens. But at any rate, other than that, pretty well done. I want to talk about just a couple of, so in the responses that I gave back to you guys, yeah. And again, I'm not picking on anybody here. Do not feel like I'm calling you out and trying to humiliate you. That's not the case here at all. It's just that something that you were the first one where I saw something actually happen, and I wrote it down in my notes. So, David, I've got something here about your hair mask, and I don't know what it is, so I want to take a look at it really quickly. So again, if you take a look at this, you can actually see that there's issues that are happening up in here. So one of the things that you need to start thinking about doing in this is that, how do you look at your image in different ways to help you see what the problems are, solve the problems, fix the problems, all that kind of. And one of the most important ways to do this is to look at your masks by themselves. So that's what we're actually going to do here. I'm going to go up to this hair mask. I'm going to hold down the Option key and click on it. It gets rid of everything except for the hair and for this layer. But then if you hold down the Option key and click on the mask, you'll actually see the mask itself. This is actually what it looks like. And you can see by looking at this one, it actually looks pretty good until I get to this part right here. And I can tell by this part right here that he's gone in and done handwork. He's gone in and actually used a brush in this. There's nothing else that explains that. That is not possible to happen in luminosity. So I'm not saying that you can't do a brushwork in here, but it's not going to be your first call. If you take a look at the quality of this mask up in here, you can see that this is based on luminosity. There's no way to paint this. So that's kind of when I'm saying to some of you about, okay, it's this luminosity part, there's an issue here, blah, 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 blah. So let me take a look at something else in here really quickly. Yeah. If we take a look at this mask, you can see in this mask, I would say this is far too aggressive. Look at, these are all supposed to be fine little hairs, and look at them. And they're not. So, but more importantly here, if I back this thing out, I'm going to invert this mask. Because this, again, this is correctly done. This is how the mask should actually be, because what it's designed to do is show the blue background. But if I invert the mask, it just gives me another way to see it. So I'm going to hit Command-I to invert it, and you can see there's an enormous amount of blue in this. So I know that the mask is too aggressive. So what I mean by too aggressive is that all of those fine little hairs should be not black. They should be dark tones of gray, middle tones of gray, even to light tones of gray to be believable. So the irony in this is that in the very same image, if you take a look at this, I'm going to invert it back again and take a look at just the layer mask, at the layer mask. You can see how aggressive this one actually is compared to this one, which is actually really beautiful and delicate and based on luminosity. Does that make sense? So you need to look at these from other ways. You need to invert them. You need to look at the masks just by themselves. You'll pick up all sorts of problems that exist in this. So for instance, if I go back to this mask as well, and I just take a look at it, and I'm hovering my cursor over the top left-hand corner, what do you see happening in my info palette?
There's a 1.
Look at the very top. That's what this thing is reading. The ones are the points that are down. The 1 is the point in the hair. The 2 is the point on the background. The hand is what's up at the very top.
245.
Right. Is that white?
No.
No. That's contamination. Now, it's hard to see it here, but again, if you invert your mask, can you see all those little white speckles? It's really hard to see it on this screen because of the projector, but I can see it looks like dust all over this. It never got cleaned out. Again, and you're not alone in this. Everybody ended up missing this top corner. Or not everybody, but I think most did anyway. I'm going to show you a couple more, and then we're actually going to do this together. And I'm not sure where it is, so hang on just 1 second. So again, looking at the mask by itself, you can see this. If you look at the image by itself, the knockout looks great. The knockout looks fine, but the minute I go in and take a look at the mask, you can spot this problem right here, a million miles away. And this is the B key to get an overlay brush. You change this to overlay. Sorry, to overlay, not soft light. You make it a little bit smaller. Hit the D key to default your colors. Get black as your foreground color. And make sure that the flow is all the way up and that the opacity is all the way up. And you fix it and you're done. But you would never know it if you don't look at the mask. You get really close and then you can't see the stuff anymore. It looks like it's doing exactly what you meant it to do, but it isn't. Okay, I think it's Aaron's. So hang on one second. I've just got a note here that just says, well done. But I wanted to show you guys something. think it's this. Yeah. So in this case right here, once you get the whole thing put together, this was actually really well done, I thought. But once you get the whole thing put together, doesn't mean it ends right here. So if I click on this layer mask, this is where I see the problem in the skin's not actually showing through. So if we take a look at the mask here, this is what it looks like. I need that to be darker. I need this area to be darker to actually let the skin part actually come through in this, or to show through in this. So I think it's here. Hang on one second. No, it's here. Yeah, I need this area in here to be lighter to show the skin through it. So it's this one. So working on and seeing it with the entire layer stack done, again, I'm going to use an overlay brush. So the B key, it's set to overlay. In this case, I want this stuff to show, so this area needs to be white. Black is now my foreground color, so I'm going to hit the X key to make it that way, and then I'm simply going to start painting on this, and I can do this repeatedly. And is this, fixing the entire problem? No, it's not fixing the entire problem, but it's doing a lot of it. So does that make sense to you guys, what's going on in here? So even after the fact, you can start to refine these things a little bit more. Is this perfect? No, but am I getting closer? Yes. Make sense? Are we good on this part? Okay. Let's start Sunny, because I want to break this up a little bit, and we'll go after it in pieces. So I'm going to close this up. I'm not going to save it. Do not do this work on, I need you to do a virgin copy of Sunny, so just start. If you only have that one copy of her, go ahead and open it up and throw all of your retouching away. You can save it as something else. You don't need to, I'm not trying to get rid of your retouching, but I want to start from scratch, basically is what I'm saying. So if you have a virgin copy of it, that's great. It'll be in session 3. There may be a copy of it in session 5. So let me take a look really quick. No, there's not. So it's going to be in your session 3. And if you can open her up, this is where we're going to start. This would be a good time to have a tablet right now. So in my case, my version of Sunny 3 does have a bunch of retouching already done on it. So I am going to get rid of everything except for the original version of it. So I've just got the background, and that's it. Yeah.
Do you have that dongle attachment?
I do.
Can I borrow that?
Yes, you can.
Because I still don't have one.
This is what you need, right?
Yes.
Yep. Sure. Okay. Everybody ready? Alrighty then. So to start with this, first things first, I'm going to make a new copy of this. Again, you always want to keep a virgin in here. You don't want to work on the original, so Command J will make a new copy of it. And I'm actually going to do something destructive on this layer right off the bat. So I want to go ahead and I'm going to rename this. I'm just going to call it New Virgin. So when I use the term virgin, basically what I'm saying is that not that she's chaste and pure or particularly religious, but that she is, this is, the original version is protected, so if something goes wrong, I can always go back. I always kept a safety. That's what the original, which is going to be my background layer. The new one is, this is something that I'm going to start this whole process. It's going to be my new modified version. And again, I'm not going to screw with it other than the destructive work I do initially. So I'm going to just type the label on this, New Virgin. And we're going to take a look at the hair. So you can pretty much tell right off the, the real challenge in all of this is this girl's hair. I mean, she's got great hair, but the challenge in this is where it's against the blue background, the challenge is to separate that. Where it's actually meeting her skin, the challenge is right there. I mean, that is the biggest challenge in all of this. So the first thing that I'm going to do is actually look at this part right up here, and I think, okay, well, the edge of this is a challenge, but at least I've got an edge. But this shit that's in the middle here, this is a nightmare. I'm going to just get rid of it. Why on earth would you guys try to select this? You need to start thinking now as a creative retoucher, not just as a machine here who's like going in and doing what you're told to do in here. It's like, how can I make this truly work? And so for me, I'm actually going to cover it up with hair. So most people, when they do this kind of work, would actually do this using the clone stamp tool. So that's what we're going to do. Hit the S key to get the clone stamp tool. If you don't need to remember that. The clone stamp tool is right in the middle of your tool palette on the left-hand side. If you click on the drop-down menu, you'll see that there's two tools inside there. One is the clone stamp tool, and the other is the pattern stamp tool. We want to be using the clone stamp tool. So then check again to see what your brush is like. The clone stamp tool by default has a 50% hardness. So that's what I'm going to set mine to be, is a 50% hardness. This is just its default. Then a normal blending mode, 100% opacity, and 100% flow. So the thing about the clone stamp tool is what we're trying to do, the tricky part about it is, if you used 100% clone stamp tool, what would end up happening is that you would actually see the edges. Well, we can try it. I'll show you exactly what I mean. I'm going to actually set the origin or the source point for my clone stamp tool on this one curl. You can see it's a really defined curl that's on the left-hand side of this curl up a little bit. So the way the tool works is you hover over where you want to set a source point to then use that point to replace the area that you're trying to cover up. So I'm trying to cover this area up here, but I'm going to set my source point out here. So I'm going to hold down my Option key, and you will see that your cursor changes. It changes to this little point. That is just, all you're saying is this is where I want to set my source point. So you click once, and it actually now sets, okay, that's it. And then I'm going to come over here to the edge, to the area over here where I'm trying to fix that, and I'm simply going to just start and paint down. And what you'll see is, especially if you zoom in here really quickly, you can see the edge where I've just painted that, and that is because my clone edge is so incredibly sharp. If you come out over here onto her skin, you can actually see this better. It's a really hard line on the edge of that brush, so it doesn't blend into the hair very well. So I'm going to hit Command Option Z twice to undo that. That resets all this. I can then go to the other extreme. So I'm going to click on my drop-down menu, and I'm going to set my hardness all the way down to 0. That was actually a 50%. So sorry, let me redo that where it really was 100%. So this is what that edge looks like. And if you do this edge in place, again, you guys, yeah, you can certainly look at this edge right here. You can spot that a mile away. You can just see that there's hair that's just new hair that's crashing into old hair, and that's never, ever, ever going to work. Here, I'll do a whole nother line down. You can still see that whole edge right there. That is because I've got 100% hard edge here. So again, Command Option Z to go all the way back. So, and then I'm going to go to the other extreme. I'm going to actually set this brush all the way 0 hardness, and we'll do the same thing again. So I'm going to do a line again here on her face, and you can see, hang on one second, I don't want to do that part. You can see now it's extremely soft at the edges, which will allow this to blend into the, to cover and blend into the original hair. But the problem we run into this is the reason we do not use the clone stamp tool in the conventional sense when we retouch, is what is happening at this edge. If we zoom in and you take a look at this edge, what you can see is on this edge, as I start to move from the center of my retouching out, so let me just show you as I start to move from this area out, I start mixing old texture with new texture, and that ends up destroying all the texture. You end up with, you can see, I'm now, at this edge right here, I'm mixing skin with hair to try to get this to blend in. Now, I'm not going to be covering her skin here. I'm actually going to be doing it on this area right here in the hair where I've got a problem. This is where I'm actually going to be doing it. But still, the idea that a really soft brush actually allows you to mix too much of the original texture with new texture, and you end up just fucking the texture up. So I'm not going to do that part either. I'm going to do the compromise in the middle, which is why they actually set the default of the clone stamp tool at a 50% hardness. So that's where I'm going to put mine. Again, normal blending mode, 100% opacity, 100% flow. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to set my clone source point here. I'm going to come over and I'm going to click, and I'm just going to paint through all of this. And the problem that I have now is, you can see, if you look at that curl, because I based it on this curl just so that you could see this, you can see I have a repeating pattern now. I have the exact same curl here that I've got here. Anybody who's skilled at looking at retouching at all will look at this and see, I could spot this across the room. And it's like, nope, clone stamp tool, wrong way to do this. So you need to actually use the hair. I'm going to use the same area as my source to fix this, but I need to modify it so that it doesn't look so much like the clone stamp tool that I'm using right now that gives me this repeating pattern. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that part. And instead what I'm going to do is the way I think it's better to do texture swapping like this. I'm going to zoom out so I can get back out. I am going to go to the pasteboard right now. So again, I'm going to hit the F key once. I'm on the pasteboard now, which will allow me to work outside. I keep my cursors and my tools outside of the image that I'm working on. I'm going to hit the L key to get the lasso tool. If you can't remember that, it's the lasso tool. It's the third one down from the top on the left-hand side. If you click on your flyout menu, make sure that you have the lasso tool and not the polygonal lasso tool or the magnetic one. Immediately, your eyes should go up to the options bar that are sitting up at the top, and you want to make sure that you have your feather is set to 0 pixels. Otherwise, we are going to make a soft selection. That's not what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of her hair on the left-hand side, and I'm going to use that as my patch. So to do that, I'm just going to start working right here with her fingers. I'm just going to drag a line up and all the way around and back down and up again. So I've just made a giant selection of her hair. I want you guys to do the same thing. So I can now, the thing about doing this kind of work right now is that people's temptation initially is to make a much smaller selection of it. Oh, I just need to select a little bit of this and move it over. You end up doing that, and all of a sudden you're almost done, and then you run out of room to do it over. And so you don't want to do that. So again, make sure your selection's bigger than you think you're going to need. Having too much of a selection is infinitely better than not enough. All right, so Command J to jump that to its own layer. So this right now, if I simply move it, so I'm going to hit the V key to get the move tool, and I'm simply going to drag it, and I'm going to put it roughly over where I think that problem spot is. But you can see now I've got the same problem. I've got a repeating pattern. This is now really repeating pattern because it's the exact same thing. This whole line right here is exactly the same as this whole line right here. So I need to change this thing that I've just copied and pasted to make it not look the same. So what I'm going to do is hit Command T. That is the transform shortcut. If you can't remember that, come up to the edit menu, down to free transform. You'll see it's just Command T. By default, you get the scale. That's the modification on here is scale. So if you have your cursor on the inside, you can move this thing around. If you bring your cursor onto the outside, you will see that your cursor turns into a double-headed arrow. This is how you rotate, and that's always the first thing that I do. I'm going to rotate this selection slightly. That in itself has broken the pattern because now I've got the original is upright. This was now slanted to the side, but that's not enough. I'm going to actually grab the center of the little white marks in the center of my bounding box at the top, and I'm going to click and drag it up. It's going to stretch my image, my new patch out now. And then I'm finally going to come over to the one on the side and click, and I'm actually going to make it wider. So I've stretched it to make it taller, I've stretched it to make it wider, and I've rotated it. So I'm really breaking up what will be the pattern. Does that make sense to everyone? What's going on? Yes?
How did you get once you made the selection, selection, how did you get onto the new layer?
So I'll go back. So you got the new version, right?
Yeah.
Okay, L key to get the lasso tool. Make a big selection of this. Make sure you get all the hair. Good. Command J jumps it to its own layer, right? Command T, rotate it, stretch it up taller, pull it out wider. Now I've got something that's different. Now, it's not really in place the way it should be, but I don't worry about that part right now. Has everybody got some sort of changed, messed up patch? We good on this part? All right. Click the check mark at the very top in the options bar to commit that. So now I need to work with it. However, I'm going to move it a little bit more in place. I'm going to hit the V key to get the move tool and just pull it down so it's really covering more roughly that area. That doesn't mean I'm going to keep it there, but that's where I'm going to start with it right here. So now in this case, I only want to cover this. I only want to change hair to cover the skin that's showing through. I don't want to change stuff that's not broken. If you get into a habit of changing everything and everything that is broken in your image, it becomes really obvious what you're doing. So we only want to change the part that's causing us a problem. So to do that, I'm going to add a layer mask to this, but I want to add a black layer mask to this. I want to hide this patch because right now I don't know where to paint on my mask. I don't know where to paint to actually fix the hole that is in her hair that is showing this skin. So to put a black layer mask on it, you have options. The easiest one, if you can remember it, is simply to hold down the Option key and then click on the Add Layer Mask, and you will see it adds a black layer mask to that layer. So now I can paint with white where I can see where this problem is. But now some people can't remember that part. So I'm going to throw away my black layer mask. You can do the same thing with me. We're going to look at all the other options about how to do this. When you get the dialog that says, do you want to apply, delete, or cancel, hit delete. We're just getting rid of it. So now I'm going to add just a regular layer mask. So I'm just going to click again on the icon at the bottom of the layers palette to add a layer mask, and it adds a white one. But now the white layer mask is selected. You can see it's got the borders, the bounding boxes around it. Just hit Command I to invert it, and we now also have a black layer mask. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. If you can't remember that, but your mask is actually selected and you take a look at your Properties panel, down at the very bottom, the Property panel for the layer mask, there is an Invert button. Click on it. It inverts it. So all of these ways. I'm going to undo that one more time. You could even, if you wanted to, with this mask sitting right here, use the keyboard control shortcuts to fill this with black. Black is the background color for me right now. So Command Delete fills it with black. Command Z to undo that. One last way to do it is to come up to the Edit menu, down to Fill, and inside of Fill, in Contents, pick black. Make sure you've got a normal blending mode and 100% opacity and say OK. So there's a million ways to get a black mask on here. But now the advantage is I can see where to paint now to show my new patch, my new fix, my hair fix. Does that make sense, everyone? Are we good on this part? All right, so I'm going to zoom into this hair area here that's damaged. I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. Make sure it is a normal blending mode brush. 100% opacity, 100% flow, and then in terms of the edge, just like your clone stamp tool, you want this to be 50% hard. We do need to blend it in somewhat. We don't want, again, the same trick that I just showed you with the clone stamp tool. You don't want it to be 100% hard. You don't want it to be 0% soft, or 0% hard, which is soft. Because, again, in one extreme, you're seeing the edge, and the other extreme, you're blending too much of the old texture into the new texture, and it becomes obvious. So to get rid of the drop-down menu, the flat-down menu that I can see right here, just go up to the very top of your image and click to get, just in the options bar up at the top in a blank spot to get the menu to go away. So my brush is about a good size. If you want to change the size of your brush, you use the bracket keys that are just to the right of the P key. So the open bracket that's next to the P key makes your brush smaller. The closed bracket that's to the right of that makes it larger. And so I'm kind of going for an area that's sort of about the size of all of this stuff in here. White has to be your foreground color because, again, we are painting white on a black mask. It will then reveal this patch that we're using. So I'm just going to start at the very top, and I'm going to paint through all of the stuff that I feel like needs to be done, that I want to actually get rid of, that's becoming a challenge to me. I'm even going to make my brush a little bit smaller, and I'm going to go after the two little divots that are sitting up there right in the very top. So this does a reasonably good job. You can see that there's no pattern that I'm repeating. I don't really see that part. But if you do see a repeating pattern, or it's not believable, it may not be believable to you, you can actually move this thing around. Now, if we hit the V key to get the move tool, you come over to your, we're still working on this patch layer. If you click and start to drag around, what you end up doing is you end up moving the entirety. You move the whole thing. That's not going to help me out. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. Instead, what you want to do is the mask is in the position that it should be in. It's revealing the area that I'm trying to fix. I need to move the pixels that are being masked out. I don't need to move the mask. So to do that, if you look over on your layer, you'll see that there is a little chain link between the pixel content of your image and the mask content. If you click on that little chain link, it goes away. Now I can move either the mask separate of the pixels or the pixels separate of the mask. And that's what I want to do. The mask is in the right spot and it is the right shape. I don't want to move it. So I'm going to click on the pixel content. So I've now got the little white borders around the pixel part, not my mask. So now when I actually move, the patch is going to move underneath the mask, and you will not see, again, I'm not going to be moving it out, but I will be changing the hair. So that's basically what I'm trying to do here. So I'm just going to click and move this around, and you can see, do I like this better? Does that work better? Do I like this part up here better? Is that better over here? That actually looks pretty good to me right there, so I like this part. You can still transform because I've broken this link. If I hit Command T to transform, sorry, I'm going to zoom back out so you can see. This is what my transform dialog box looks like. I can continue to rotate the thing that's actually underneath there. So I can continue to modify this patch to the point that it looks believable. Is this making sense to everyone? What's going on here? So I don't need to actually rotate it anymore, so I'm going to just hit the X out of there. I like what this patch is actually doing right now. This is working for me. But think, how many of you guys spent how many hours trying to get that fucking hair, the skin that was underneath all that hair? I just get rid of it. I know, but I need you to start thinking about this. What did I tell you my objective in this class? Was to teach you how to lie. In every opportunity you get, I want you to think, how can I make this easier for myself, more believable? How can I develop the great lie? So this is now working for me. However, we're going to continue to work on this. I can't have this in two separate layers. So with the top layer selected, hold down the Command key and hit the letter E. It merges it down into my new version. And now this explains why I've got a new version. Every layer that I make on this is going to be based on this new one that does not have that hair problem. Is everybody good on this part? Say what?
Mine's not like coming together the way yours did.
So do you have the very top layer selected?
Yes.
And you're holding Command E? And what happens? Did the rest of you merge down? Now would be a good time to save your work. Okay, so this guy is on. That's on. Oh, you don't have a new Virgin original part. you should have had an original part. This is now, you can't merge this down because this is a smart object to begin with. And you need a new version without this. So you need to come down here, click on this. You're going to make Command J to make a copy of this. You're going to rename that original copy new version. You're going to then rasterize this smart object. Layer smart object, rasterize, or rasterize smart object, either one. Get them all the way to the bottom. Boom. And then select your top layer here, Command E, and you're good.
Thank you.
Sure. So Sarah's issue was that she had actually converted this to a smart object. She didn't have the new version on top, and she was trying to merge down into a smart object, which you cannot do. Okay, so everybody save your work right now, and I've got 12 after, be back, hard 10 guys, be back at 22 after.
Did Command E just combine them?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to get them back?
Command Z to undo it.
But after
Or
that-
go in history. Go into history right before you had to merge down. Click on move. It's back. But you want it merged down because we are now, it's our new version. It's our new base image. Aaron. I'm sorry?
That's a destructive edit though, like you can't go back without it.
Oh, no, you can't go back. But I've got the original sitting right underneath it, the original. So if I needed to undo that for some reason, or use something from the original, it's sitting right here. So I'm going to Command E to bring it down, but turn this off, and this is still I can do anything I want. So I have both. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So back into our scenario, something that just came up to David, and I want to make sure everybody knows this, or if this happens. If you hit your B key to get a brush, you should see a typical circle outline like this. I'm going to make mine a little bit bigger so you can see it. If you hit your keycaps, you lose the circle around it. And so what happens is it's still a brush, and you still get the center of the brush. You just can't tell how big it is or where the edges are. It still works just like a brush. But when this happens to people, if you don't know the trick to undo it, the trick to undoing it is undo your key, undo your caps lock, and it will actually come back. Okay, so I am now not going to touch this new version copy. As a matter of fact, what a lot of people who retouch, I don't do this a lot, and this is probably a bad habit on my part. So I'm going to suggest that you maybe get into a better habit of that. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lock this layer now because it's a new version. I don't want to screw it up. I don't want to be able to do anything to it. So if you take a look right above the layer, you'll see that there's a thing that says lock, and then next to it is a checkerboard. Next to that is a brush. Next to that are arrow keys, and then next to that it looks like a frame, and then next to that is a lock. If you click on the first one, just the checkerboard, you'll see it puts a little lock icon down in here. You can still move your image around. You can still paint on it, but anything that is transparent in the image, you cannot paint anything once it's transparent, you can't paint anything onto that. So it's a really good thing once you actually get an image that has transparency in it and you want to do something else. If you protect, that's what we're basically doing, is it's protecting the area that is transparent. So that's what that lock is about. You can actually add the paintbrush to the next one to it, and you'll see when you add the paintbrush to it that the transparency one goes away. Now it doesn't need to be there because this is saying you can't paint on this image. You can't paint on this. So if you try again, hit the B key, get a brush, and then come over on your image right now and click and try to paint, and you'll see this is a behavior that I hate that they've actually added in this. It actually makes a brand new layer for you on top of this, and then you can paint on that layer. Now, I think that is a mistake to do that because, again, protection should be protection. This is sort of like a condom with a hole in it. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. The next one over is the move tool. So if you click on this, you cannot, now in my case right now, I not only can't move it, but I can't paint on it as well. And because I can't paint on it, you don't need to have the transparency part locked. And then the last one over here has to do with the artboard, and it has to do with placing your image, and it doesn't allow you, we don't get into artboards or any of that kind of stuff in here, so you can pretty much ignore that. You click on these same things and they will unlock. If you want to lock everything, just so you don't want to go through what are you locking, you just want to lock the whole thing down, it's the lock thing that looks like a lock. Click on that and now you will not be able to do anything to this image other than copy it, which is now what we're going to do. So I'm going to leave the lock on. Command J will actually then make a copy of it, and you'll notice that the copy is not locked. And then I would rename this, and the thing that we're going to go after first is the blue background. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to rename it blue background. The reason I add the blue to this is that I don't want anybody confused that it's the same as the background layer that's on the very bottom. So we're going to go after the blue background. So I'm going to double click on the hand to kick all the way back out to take a look at it. And for me, when I look at this background, the biggest challenge is going to be the hair that's on the right side and also the little bit of hair that's on the left side. Those are going to be more challenging for me than the sweater is going to be my guess in all of this. Well, but we'll find out. So that's what I'm going to do, how I'm going to go after doing this. I'm going to do this using channels. So I'm going to go over to my channels palette. I'm going to actually raise up my history a little bit so that I can see all of my channels. I've already got channels in mind, so let me get rid of all these really quickly. Hang on one second. I've got all of the ones that we're going to make already made. Okay.
No, you go ahead.
Can you make folders or like groups in channels?
No, it's sad. They should have all those things in there, and they don't have any of them. So, what were you going to say?
My question is, I still have the points from the RGB on here. How do I get rid of those?
So if you still have RGB readouts from a previous version of it, go ahead and then click on the color sampler tool. So again, it's the eyedropper, but the flyout menu, get to the color sampler tool, and up at the very top, there will be a place that says in the options bar, clear all. Just click on that and it'll get rid of them all. Okay, so I'm going to look at my red channel first, and again, what I'm looking for is contrast. Not contrast of her skin against her hair, but contrast of the hair against the background. So the red is not great, so I'm hoping I've got a better channel for that. So I'm going to click on the green, and in the green it's already better. Again, the background got lighter, the hair got a little bit lighter, but there's still more contrast between the two. And then I'm going to go to the blue, and the blue is hands down the best. So again, the blue, the background is very light, the hair is still holding on. It's as dark as it was pretty much in the red channel. So that's what I'm going to start with. And this is going to be my blue background knockout. So I'm going to make a copy of the blue channel just by dragging the channel down to the little icon at the bottom of the channels palette that is the square with the plus in the middle. And I'll just make it, it's called blue copy, and I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to call it blue background knockout. So I abbreviated. I just called it blue back knockout. So again, I'll know what it is. Okay, so now I actually need to increase the contrast because I'm trying to build a mask that will show the blue background but that will hide the hair and the figure. That's my goal in all of this. So to do this, I'm going to zip into the area. You'll see there's that one curl on her head. I'm going to call it like clock face here, about 3 o'clock. It's the one most demonstrative curl that's sitting out on the outside. So I'm going to look at this, and this is the problem. This is where people run into problems with this, is that if I pick a spot on this hair right here, on this curl that's out in this area and here, again, let me go to a better icon. At this area in here, if I do put a color sampler point here, this hair has actually got transparency to it. It's not solid. And so if I make it black, my mask is too aggressive. So I'm not going to pick that as a spot. There's another thing that you need to take into consideration as well. I'm going to pick a spot probably somewhere right in this area right in here. We're going to see what this looks like. There's another spot that I've got my eye on that I might try here. But the thing is that if I pick this spot right here that is lighter, so I'm going to zoom way in on this so you can see what I'm talking about. This area of hair in here is lighter. If I pick that spot and make it black, the area right above it and right below it that is already black will still be black. But if I pick the area that is close to being black and I make it, it's because you'll see you're hovering over it. I got 26, 26, 26 in this area. If I make it black, the area that's right above it that's lighter in tone will not get there. So this whole idea of where you pick your points actually matters. But one that I've never tried, and I'm going to try it right now, is actually this clump of lighter hair that's sitting over here. I'm going to see what this looks like if I go after this area right in here and I make it black. What I would avoid is if you zoom out on this, there's highlights on this girl's hair. So you can see like this is a highlight in her hair. You don't want to pick a highlight. You want to pick something that's truly should be black. So if you are unsure about this area, and I'm a little unsure about it right now, I'm going to go back up to the top and just click on my RGB composite and ask yourself, is this a highlight on her hair? Is this shine in her hair? And it actually is. So I'm not going to pick that area. It will make my mask too aggressive. So I am going to go back to this little area that's sitting right in here. That's the area that I'm actually going to go after. So back all the way down to my blue background guy. Hold down the space bar to get the hand to move him over. I'm going to grab my color sampler tool, click on it, make sure that you have a 3x3 average, not a point sample. Again, we're not that good in our targeting. And I'm going to go right in the middle of this thing at that curl between the two darker areas, and I'm going to click, and it will put down a color sampler point there. Then I'm going to just come right out onto the background, not too far, but close. Again, I try to keep my color sampler tool points pretty close. You want to make sure you're far enough away from the hair that you're not getting any hair on that background, and I'm not in this area here, so I'm going to put my second point out there. Then I'm going to check to make sure that I started the recording again, and I did. And so then back to Photoshop. So then in my info palette, the readouts, you can see that it's reading out with a K value. The reason it's a K value is that this channel can only be grayscale. So the reason they put K here is that the K is the K of CMYK. It's the black ink of CMYK. It doesn't mean anything to me in this context, though. I need because I'm going to run levels on this thing. You don't get a K readout in levels unless you convert this image to CMYK. I'm not going to do that. So I'm simply going to click on the eyedropper under the number 1, and I will get a flyout menu, and I'll say, I want you to show this to me in RGB color instead. You can pick all of these colors. You could say, I want to see this in CMYK or LEB, but we want to see it in RGB because our levels dialog box, to make this more contrasty, gives us readouts in RGB. So anyway, I'm going to change the number 1 point here, and I'm going to do the same thing for my number 2 point. I'm going to change it so I have an RGB readout. And so now I know what my challenge is. I need these, in my case, it's 59, 59, 59 for my dark point. Yours may not be exact, but you should be close to that. You should be within a few points of that. And then on my background, I've got 206s. Again, you should be close to that. If you don't, shout out now. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to do levels. So again, it's not an adjustment layer over here on your layers palette. It is actually an adjustment of this channel. So the only way to get to that is Command L. If you can't remember that, you're going to go up to the image menu, down to adjustments, down to levels. And you can see Command L is the dialog for doing this. So Command L to bring up the levels dialog box. And then you'll also notice that now you've got 2 sets of values for your 1 and 2 point, your number 1 point and your number 2 point. Those are before and after values. Now, we haven't made any changes using levels yet, so they are exactly the same. But once we start changing the level part, the values that are on the right side will start to move. So it gives you a before and after. And so I know in my before and after, I want this 59 before to be zeros on the right-hand side, and I want this 206s to be 255s on the right-hand side. That's the goal that I'm heading for. So I'm going to click on the black point underneath my histogram in the levels dialog box. I'm going to click and start to drag towards the center, and the whole time I'm just watching the readout of my after numbers of that point number 1. You want to get close to 0, but not quite there. So I'm now at 2. I'm going to stop there because, again, if you keep using the slider, you can easily overshoot the mark. And when you go too far, when you go unnecessarily too far, you make your mask too aggressive, which is not what I want. So I'm going to go to my arrow keys and I click on the up arrow key. And guys, I don't remember whether it's the up or down arrow key. I just start clicking on one. And if it moves in the right direction, I know I picked the right one. And if it moves in the wrong direction, I do the other one. So in this case, the up arrow key is doing the right thing, and I keep tapping till I get to 0. So I'm at 0 right now. You'll see that there is a mismatch, and I've never been able to explain this. Adobe certainly can't explain it. Why it says that I've got 59 values here, but it takes me a 64 to get those to 0, I will never know. That to me seems wrong, but Adobe doesn't listen to me, so what can I tell you? So now we need to go after the white point. So again, I'm going to click on the white point underneath my histogram and start to drag it towards the center. And I'm also now looking at the right values of my point number 2, the after values. I need to get this close to 255, but stop short of it. So if you hit 255 like I just did, back it off till you start to get some value in there other than 255. Then again, go to your arrow keys and tap this in one at a time until you just get to 255. Now, it's important to know that when you change these values, they can actually impact the original one, and in this case, it did. It actually changed my original value, my black point slider that was reading zeros is now reading 1. So you need to then drag across the value. So I just selected that 64 value so that I can still use my arrow keys to actually tap that in till I get to 0. Then again, look back up at your white point. Make sure that the change that you just made didn't impact your white point. And this is the minimum that I can do, the minimum amount of damage, the minimum amount of change that I can do to actually get, hopefully, the mask that I'm looking for. Now, before you say OK to this, I'm going to use my arrow on my keyboard to actually zoom back out. So if you hold down the space bar, the command, and the option key, you will temporarily get the negative magnifying glass. Click on it and you can zoom back out. And then what I'm really looking for is the quality of this edge right here. This is what I'm really wondering about. And so I also at this stage of the game use my preview check mark inside the levels dialog box to turn this on and off, because this is now showing me, oh, okay, am I keeping all the background underneath this hair on the side? Look what happens. Don't do this, but look up at my screen to see what happens here. I'm going to make my mask too aggressive. I'm going to click on this black point and I'm going to continue to kick it over towards the center. Look what happens to the background in this area right in here when I do this. That is now gone. That is way too aggressive a mask. It is now all of that background area. Again, I'm going to turn my preview mark off here. All of the background that was showing through that hair, that's now become a part of my mask. I'm not getting rid of it. It's going to show up in my image. So again, my mask was way too aggressive on that move. So I'm going to pull that black point back down. I'm going to turn the preview back on. And I'm going to go back down to where I know it should be. Again, I'm going to go back till I start to get a positive value in those ones, in my point number 1. Go to my arrow keys and tap it in until I get to 0. So this is where I was. So I'm liking the way this edge looks. It's showing me what should be hair, all the little fine hairs. You'll notice that all these little fine hairs are not pure black. They shouldn't be. There's transparency in that hair. So you want them to be mid-tone values. You want, not mid-tones, you want them to be neither white nor black. You want those sort of like mid-levels of gray. They can be dark grays, they can be middle grays, they can be light grays, any of that stuff in between, because that's where you get transparency. So this is feeling pretty good to me, so I'm going to go ahead and say OK to this. So then I'm going to double click on the hand again and zip back out. Now, I've done a pretty good job on this part, I feel like. I do have places in her hair that need to be fixed. All those highlights that are still on her hair, I want to fix all of those right now. So this is when I go to my tablet. I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. And in this case, I'm going to start out, I really want to stay away from these edges. You don't want to touch these edges at all. So you need to be careful about having a brush that's too soft, because I can start to work on this area right in here to get rid of those highlights. But if my brush is too soft, it will be spraying ink out into this area that I'm trying to preserve. So I am going to make my brush completely hard brush, 100% hardness, because that eliminates any spray. I am going to also make it a normal blending mode, 100% opacity, 100% flow. And in this case, you can leave it at normal. I don't need to worry about that, but I'm going to zoom into her hair, and I'm just going to get rid, again, white was my foreground color, so my first stroke painted white. That would be a mistake. Command Z to undo that. Hit the X key to get black as your foreground color, and then just get rid of these little highlights that are on there. Again, stay away from the edges of her hair. I just use my space bar to give me the hand to move around. And I'm going to get rid of all of that part and this part down in here. That part's looking pretty good. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to get rid of all of those. That's contamination. When I talk about contamination in a mask, that is exactly what I'm talking about. And again, stay away from the edges as you start to get down here. Now I'm going to start on the the left-hand side of her, just because I ended up over here. So you can see that her fingers are actually surrounded by her neck. Her fingers are actually on her cheeks. So I can still continue with this brush to get rid of all of those fingers parts in here. All of that is now gone. Where I'm starting to worry about this, or where this gets dicier, is the part of her sweater, the collar of her sweater. You can see there's gray tones in there. Now, you could try to paint this using a normal brush, but there's no reason to. If you change your blending mode of your brush from normal down to overlay, it is going to protect this white background. And now watch my screen. I'm actually going to do, part of my brush is going to be on that white background, and I'm simply going to paint through it. Because it is an overlay brush, it does not lay ink down in that background. And so now at this stage of the game, I've got the edge line down here that I'm looking for. That part looks great. I'm going to go over to the other side now and deal with the fingers that are on the other side. You can use this same overlay trick on the other side. I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller. Now, you don't need to worry about where her fingernail is. Look at my screen to see where I'm talking about. Or the other side, this part of her finger you don't need to worry about, because there's black hair all the way surrounding it. That's all I'm trying to do, is come up with the edge so that I can paint inside the edge. So I'm just going to start working. I've got a smaller brush. If you want the same size I have, it's a 35 pixel brush. I'm just going to, again, it's an overlay mode, and it is black is my foreground color. I'm simply going to click and start to drag down on this finger line like this, and I'm going to come all the way down. Now I've got a pretty solid line there that I could paint inside of, but I'm lazy. I'm going to make my life better. I'm going to click and do the same drag again, and you'll see that you can build up density in that line. I'm going to do one more in there just to give me a little bit more room, so I don't have to be so particular about where I paint. Now, I don't need to worry about where the finger actually touches her skin, because all of that's going to be black. Her skin is going to be black, her fingernails, her finger are going to be black, and the hair is going to be black. The only thing that I don't want to be black is this background. So this part's working well for me here. I'm going to do the same thing in here, just a little bit on those fingers. If you come down now, and you can see that there's part of the sweater that's showing in the back, and then there's this area right here in the very back that is background. Now, if you can't remember that, don't hesitate to temporarily go up to your RGB channel, click on it, and say, okay, yeah, that background is indeed background. But now I've got something that's really freaking me out, and it's this. Look what has happened. Watch my image. Hopefully this has not happened to you. I'm going to click on my image, and my image moves. That means my channel that I'm working on right here is no longer in register with my background. So the mask that I'm making is going to be completely out of register. Now, I can try to get this back in. We'll see what happens. You can also go to your history palette. What you're looking for here is, at some point I moved my channel, and it's right here. This move right here under channels options. So this move is causing me problems. So Hopefully I'm going to be able to get it realigned again. We're going to find out right now. I'm going to double click on the hand to do this, and you can see now I've got a border that's running around my channel right here. If I click on the green, that border's not there. So it's this blue part right here. Sorry, this guy all the way down here. So I'm going to zoom into this area down here. I'm going to click on, again, this is my blue mask. I'm going to hit the V key to get the move tool, and I'm going to use my arrow keys only to tap down. And then my left arrow key to tap over. And then I'm going to pray. And it looks like I've got it back in register. So to find out for sure, pick something that's really super detailed. Like I'm going to zoom into her eye. I'm going to look at the vein in her eye, and then I can click again this on and off. Yeah, I'm back in register again. And I'm going to immediately save my work and be thankful that I didn't have to start this all over, because we don't have time for that today. All right, so continuing to work on this, there is blue background that's right in here. Now I can try and hit this with an overlay brush. We'll see if that works. So again, I'm working on my blue background knockout layer, the B key to get a brush. Black is my foreground color. I am in an overlay blending mode. I still have it as a completely hard brush. I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to see if I can hit across that area. And that actually got that part. And so, yeah, I can use an overlay brush to do that. I'm also going to darken up her skin right there just to give me something where I can work with. While I'm in this area right in here, there's hair that's actually, and background that's touching her cheek right here. I'm going to still use my overlay brush to get that part out. And that's all looking pretty good right here. So I've got pretty much what I want, except for this one fingernail that's right here. So I'm going to zoom into this fingernail. I can use my overlay brush to get the finger. That's not the problem. So I am going to use the overlay brush for that. The problem is that pointy nail part. I can't do that with an overlay brush. So I'm going to hit the P key to get what tool? Pen tool. How did you guys do with the pen tool assignment? Did it work? I know. All right, P key really quickly, just to get the little tip of that. And you think to yourself, why in the fuck would you do that? Nobody is ever going to see that. That's the difference between, again, a $9.50 hour retoucher and a $2,000 a day retoucher is the person who's going to go after this. And that's going to be you guys. So I'm going to click here to simply set a point. I'm going to come out to the tip to set another point. I'm going to then click and pull the curve out. And then I'm just going to complete the path. That's all I need to do. So this is what mine looks like. I'm going to go to my path palette. I'm going to, I got a lot of paths in here as well. This is all left over from when I've done this before. Okay, I've got a work path where this thing is sitting. I'm not going to save this. There's no reason to save this part. There's some things that I might save, but I'm not going to save this one. So I'm going to hover over the icon, hold down my command key and click. It loads it as a selection. And then I'm going to go back to my blue background. And again, with my brush, because I've got an active selection now, you cannot paint outside of this selection. You can paint inside of it, but not outside. Yes? So if you made the path, go to your path palette, hover over the icon, hold down the command key, and click. All right, and then back to your channel. And with this now selected, again, it's an active selection. I can't paint outside of this. But my brush is still in overlay, and I don't think I can really get that white part of the nail completely done in overlay. So I'm going to change it back up to normal. And then simply paint across this. Again, the selection is controlling where I can do this. Command D to deselect. So then the rest of this I can actually paint in using my brush right here. I just needed it for that little baby tip of the brush. That's all I needed it for. The rest of this, all of her fingers here, this all is going to black. Again, stay away from the edges. Do not get near the hair. Do not get near any of that part. But the rest of this, I'm just painting in using a normal brush, a completely hard brush, and it's just developing my edges a little bit better so that I can ultimately go in either with a large brush or a selection and just, again, clear all of this part out. So this part's all working good for me. I've got this part around her hand is pretty good. This other edge over here is pretty good, but the white shoulder is not good at all. And again, I've got this black line on this side, which is making me really nervous. So hang on one second, make sure I didn't move this again. It doesn't look like I moved it, but it looks like my mask over here on this side is now going to cause me problems because again it looks like I don't have the rest of the image that's over here in this mask. So you guys are just going to cut me slack on this one because otherwise I'm starting this whole process over again and you don't want to watch that. Okay, so but at least it's in register, so it's just missing when I save something there. It treats it as if it didn't exist. I want to show you though I can fix this. So this is what I'm going to do. This is, again, the fuck ups that you do. You guys are going to benefit from seeing how you fix this fuck up, I hope. So this is what I'm going to do. So you see what's happened. I've lost this part of my image, right? So I need to bring it back. The thing is that I can clone this back, but I need the clone to be exact where my source and where I'm going to drop this point down. So to do that, don't do this. Just watch me. I'm gonna hit the F key once to get to the black pasteboard, the F key again to get back to the thing that's got the stoplights on it. Now, do you guys have your rulers showing? You need to have your rulers showing, and they should just be left on all the time. To get to your rulers to show, come up to your window menu, come up to your view menu, and come down to rulers and just put a check mark next to it, and then your rulers will actually show. So the reason we want our rulers to show is this is where you pull guidelines out of. So I'm going to go over to this area where I'm having this problem. Again, this whole side of my image is missing. So I'm going to grab a guideline, and I'm going to pull it out here into this area right in here, and then I'm going to grab another guideline and pull it down. What I'm looking for is a target point. So then I'm going to zip into this target point right here, even more. I'm going to hit the S key to get the clone stamp tool. And you remember I said how important it was to have that little X, that little cross in the middle of your clone stamp tool? If you can hover that little cross right over your clone stamp tool and on the guidelines, and again, don't do this with a tablet because when you lower your stylus on the tablet, it will slightly move to one side or the other. The best thing to do this with is a mouse, but I've got the source point of my clone stamp tool right on the crosshairs of my guide. I'm going to hold down the Option key and click. Then I'm going to go to my, I take that back. I'm going to go to my blue channel first, and that's where I'm going to set my guide point. So again, I'm on the blue channel, the original thing that made this. I'm going to hold down my, oh, this isn't going to work because I haven't run levels on it. Well, I'm going to finish showing you how you would register this regardless. Option key down, click, that sets the source point, and then I'm going to go back to my blue and click. This is now setting my destination point, and now they are locked in alignment. So now I can come over and I can paint in the rest of my image here, blah, 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 blah. Did that make sense, everybody, what I just did? Okay, I don't like the way this looks, so I'm going to Command Z and undo that, and we're just going to finish this up. Okay, if you want to get rid of your guidelines that I've actually pulled out now, come up to the View menu, down to Guides, and then down to Clear Guides, and they'll go away. F key to get back to the pasteboard. Zoom back out. So the last thing that I need to do on this selection is I need to build the white shoulder. So if you take a look at it, there's this white shoulder that's sitting up on the top, and it's simply not there in my mask. So to do this, I'm going to go back through the whole process that I did about finding a channel that will give me the separation of the white shoulder against the blue background. So I'm going to click on my red channel, and you can see there's decent separation between the sweater and the background here. If I go to my green channel and click on that, they're almost the same. That's horrible. That's not going to help me at all. And then if I go to the blue, it's even worse because the blue channel is why I'm having this problem to begin with. So my best candidate to just give me the shoulder between the background and that white shoulder is the red channel. So I'm going to copy the red channel. Drag the red channel down to the little icon that's got the square with the plus in the middle. Double click on the name of this, and we're going to change it from red copy to temp shoulder. And say OK. So now we're going to do the same trick that we've done before. It's just levels on this. So over to your color sampler tool, again, the one that looks like an eyedropper with the little star above it. And then moving in, take a look at my screen really quickly. So this is another thing where you need the point that you pick matters. So if I need the sweater to go white. So you can see on the part, again, let me get a cursor that you can see better. On this area that's right in here, it's darker than this area of white that's right in here. If I set my sample point at this area right here and get it to go white, this other area that was lighter will already be white. So this would be a good place to pick. If I do the opposite, if I pick this lighter area and then make it white, the area that's here that was not lighter will not quite be, it'll be close to white, but it won't actually get there. Does that make sense to everybody what I'm talking about? Yes? Well, let's put 2 points down. You'll see. I'm going to click in here, eyedropper, color sampler tool. I'm going to put a point here where it's dark and another point over here where it's lighter. Then take a look. We're going to change our RGB values. So I'm going to change my point number 1 to RGB. I'm sorry, my point number 3 to RGB and my point number 4 to RGB. And you can see that my point number 3, the first one that I put down, it's reading 189. If I get that to all the way up to 255, the one that other point, the 211, will already be there. But if I take my 211, if I base it on my 211, this 189 is almost 20, 30 points less. It will not get to white. Make sense? Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this number 4 point right here. To actually get rid of it, click on it, and then you can hit the delete key, and it gets rid of your whole mask. So don't hit the delete key. Hit Command-Z to undo that. Hold down the Option key and click on the point, and it actually gets rid of it. So then I need a point on the background. So again, just click on a number 4 point on the background. So I've got both of my color sampler points. I'm going to change them both to reading RGB. Command-L to bring up the levels dialog box. And again, I'm going to do the same trick I did before. This 189 needs to actually be 0, so I'm going to click and start to drag all the way over. Sorry, I got there way too quick. So again, I'm looking at my point number 4 now, guys. This is now my points. My highlights and shadows have reversed, but that's fine. It doesn't matter. Again, this 132 needs to be 0, so I'm going to continue to drag my black point slider till I get close to 0. Stop. I'm at a 6 right now. And go to your arrow keys and tap it in till you get to 0. And then grab your highlight slider and start to pull towards the center. And I'm looking for my point number 3 to get to 255. Again, get close, but then stop. I'm going to get to a 254, go to your arrow keys, and tap this in. I ended up picking up tone again in my shadow point. Again, it's reading 1 now instead of 0, so I'm simply going to drag across that value and then go to my arrow keys to tap it in. So now I've got basically this I can use as a selection to then control where I paint this shoulder in. Did this work for everyone? first off, you need to change these two so that they're reading RGB values. So click on the eyedropper, RGB value, other eyedropper, RGB value. Good, and L to bring up the levels. Good, so now, again, if you click on your dark slider and start to drag it across, what you're looking for is to get this to 0. It's aggressive, go. Stop, pull back, you're way too far, you gotta come back. 9, you're at 6, and then
And also, I try to move, even when I try to move this one all the way, like it's
if I go
still.
slider, you want this value to go to 255. Stop, you're close, back off. Okay, does everybody have something that looks like this? Yes.
I feel like when I move it, like all of them move, and also like if I go all the way to the end, for the other slider, it's still not 255.
Yeah, but you've still got, this is a K value right here. You have no idea what that is.
Yeah, all my points are.
And you're way overshooting it, Mark. Stop. No, you want this close to 0. Keep going, keep going, keep going.
Oh.
No, pull that way to get it to go to 0. Closer, 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 closer. Stop. Pull it back a little bit. Go to your arrow keys. Perfect. And then your other one, your white point slider, start to bring it towards the center. You want this to go to, you hit it way too quick. Back it off again. Come back and start to get, you're getting closer to 55. Keep going. Yeah, go to your arrow keys. Perfect. Good. And that's the edge you want. But again, this point right here is in the wrong spot. This point, see how you've still got tone in here?
Yeah.
You can actually click on this spot and drag it up to where you have tone. No, that blacker, that darker part, the darker part. No, darker, right in there. The darker part.
Okay.
So then you can see that this is now, this is still giving you 0, 0, 0, but again, hit levels, Command L to bring up your levels dialog box. And in this case right now, this is not light enough, so click on your white point and start to drag. This has got to get to 255. Keep going, keep going, keep going, stop, go to your arrow keys. That's what you're looking for. So has everybody got something sort of like this? Okay, go ahead and say okay. So again, this is now a mask that I can turn into a selection that will control where I can paint. But what I want everybody to notice is that look at the edge of this. You see how you have transparency in there? That's because this is a fuzzy edge. If this was a sharp line, this would not be working for us. This is a fuzzy sweater. This is the quality of mask that you're actually building here. Does this make sense, everyone? So to use this, I'm going to zip back out so I can see the whole mask. I'm going to then use this to simply paint on the mask that I'm trying to build for the background. So I'm going to hover over the icon. Again, it's already selected, but hover over the icon, hold down your Command key and click. It loads this as a selection. Now if you go back to the blue background knockout that we are trying to build, I have an active selection going. Black is my foreground color. I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush, make it sure it's a normal brush. Mine's going to be a completely hard brush. It's also going to be 100% opacity, 100% flow. But then I want you to come up to this area that is the blue background, and I want you to try to paint up here. And if you see that you can scrub back and forth till you're blue in the face, nothing is ever going to go down in that area because it is outside of the active selection. Remember, when we built this thing, that area was black. So when you load a mask, the area that is white is 100% loaded, the area that is black is 0% loaded, and everything that's in between will give you variations of gray in between to give you transparency. But in our case right now, this is doing exactly what we want, but I need to show you a trick now that matters. So I'm just going to make a relatively large brush. Again, the selection is controlling where I can paint, and I'm going to paint along this sweater line right here. So I'm just going to click and start to drag and go down this line like this, all in one single stroke. Now, if you zoom in and you take a look at this, you'll see that I get those little fuzzy parts of the sweater. But if you hit this a second time, you're going to build density. Look at what happens the second time I hit this. You don't want that to happen. You've built the right selection. But the reason I'm pointing this out is that you need to select that entire upper line in one stroke. Otherwise, you're going to be doubling over this and it's going to build more density that you don't want there. Does that make sense? So again, watch what happens on mine. I'm going to go all the way back. So watch what happens here. This is the problem I want you to avoid. So I'm going to click and just drag along this line right here. So I clicked and dragged along that line. But then in order to start again right here, I've got to start where it's black. Watch what happens to all the fuzzy parts right here. If I click again, all of a sudden this is much darker than it should be. So again, you don't want to do that. You want to do this all in one single stroke. So I'm zooming out so I can see the entire thing. Click and drag all across this in one single stroke. I haven't lifted my cursor up off of my pad at all. And that is the only thing we needed to do. Command D to deselect, and then you can throw that temporary shoulder away. It's done its job. All I need to do now is make the rest of the sweater and her face black. So I typically do a bigger area of this using my brush. And then I'm going to zip back out, and I'll do more of this on the side of her face just to give me bigger areas, so that now that I've got all of this, select or all of this area black. Again, I can zip back out. I can now use my lasso key, the L key, and I can do a lasso of all the lower half of her body and make that black. So I've got an active selection going. Black is my foreground color. Option delete fills it. Command D to deselect. And then I can do the same thing for her face. Again, I've got all these lines. And option delete, Command D to deselect. And finally, I missed a little spot right there. So this is now the layer mask that I'm actually going to go for, but I don't think it's finished yet. And so this is what I was talking to you guys about before. We need to come in and check these areas. So I'm not painting anything. I'm just hovering my cursor over the area that's white by her left-hand shoulder. And you can see I've got a 255 readout. So that's telling me that that actually is black. But if I come up to this upper corner in here, you can see I'm reading 247, 247. There's contamination all over this area that's up here. So to fix that contamination, I'm going to go to an overlay brush. I'm going to make this a completely soft brush because I've got to get really close to this hair here that I want to keep. So I'm going to make it a really soft brush, and I'm going to make it a really large brush. So the B key to actually make it, bracket keys to make my brush bigger. And then I'm going to zoom into this area right in here. And you can see, if you take a look at it, you can sort of spot it. If you invert this channel, so Command I to invert it, you'll actually see all those little flecks of white that are in here. That's what I need to actually take care of and I need to get rid of. So to get rid of it, I'm going to work with this in the negative because it's easier to see those little flecks of white on black than it is to see the little flecks of black on white. So it doesn't matter. I can just keep inverting this back over and over and over again. So I'm going to get close to the hair. I'm going to click and pull away from it, and that gives me a pretty good job here. I'm going to do the same thing up here at the top. Again, I'm staying away from the finest of the little hairs, and you can see my brush is spraying a little bit of ink into those super fine hairs, but that's okay. It's a compromise that you've got to make, and I'm going to do the same thing down here on the sides. And then finally, the corner that's up here in the corner is, you can just paint all you want to on that. It's solid. So now my readout is giving me zeros in this area right here. So then Command I to invert it back. And I know that this area has now been cleaned out. So this is the mask that I'm actually looking for. So let's see how we did. Hover over the icon of this blue background. Hold down the Command key and click. Loads it as a selection. And then back to your layers panel, go to your blue background layer, and we are going to add this blue background layer as a layer mask. And click on it and turn off the new version and the one underneath it. And this is basically what we've got. Again, because I've moved my tool and then saved it, I've got this border around here. But this is what my layer mask looks like. If you invert the layer mask at this stage of the game, you can actually see this has actually done a really good job of masking this whole part out. Now, I have got some blue that's in this hair. That's actually called spill. We'll talk about how to fix spill later on. But did this work for everyone? Are we good on this part? Great. Back to your new virgin layer. Command J to create another new copy of it. I'm going to drag this up to the very top on top of my blue background. I'm going to turn off my blue background and turn on my new virgin copy. Double click on it, and I'm going to call this sweater. So we need to build a layer mask for this. So I'm going to use a different method for this. The problem with this one is if you take a look at the channels, if you take a look at the red, you can see the red is a pretty good against the background, but it's horrible against her skin. It's almost exactly the same gray. If you go to the green one as well, it's not much better. And if you go to the blue one, it's slightly better, but not a lot better. It's, again, the tones of this are too close to the luminosity of the sweater is too close to the luminosity of her skin to really use a channel to make a good selection out of this. So I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm actually going to use the Select and Mask workspace. So in the Select and Mask workspace, you don't want to have anything on underneath this guy, because if you have one of your virgin layers on or any other layer on, when you go to see what is being selected, you've got the exact same thing underneath it, so you won't see any difference. So again, I'm going to simply leave that just like it is. I've got everybody turned off except for the sweater layer. Up to the Select menu, down to Select and Mask. And this will bring you into the Select and Mask workspace. So inside of the Select and Mask workspace, my transparency is set really high, so I'm going to change it down to 50. Because what this will now do is it will show us what is being selected and what is not being selected. So I'm going to come down to this 50 part right here. And then what I want this to select is just the sweater. That's all I want this to go for. I don't want to select her skin, and I don't want to select her hair, and I don't want to select the blue background. So to do that, you use the tool at the very top on the left-hand side. This is the quick selection tool. Remember, this tool, you do not want it to touch an edge that it is going to find. So I'm going to make mine a little bit larger. I don't want to cross this line where the sweater and her skin interact. I want the tool to find that line for me instead. So I'm simply going to click up at the top, and I'm going to start to drag down, and then I'm going to come across, and then I'm going to continue my way across, and then down here in the very bottom. And that all looks pretty good, but what's missing in my selection? The shoulder. So make sure that you come up and get the shoulder as well. And that part's all looking really good to me. So I'm going to zoom in and take a closer look at this. What I'm missing right here is the part of her sweater that goes back behind her neck. So I'm going to make my brush smaller, although I don't like this tool to do this kind of work, but we'll see what it does. And simply going to click and drag it in here. And personally, I don't like the way this looks. So I'm going to use the pen tool to do this instead. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. But then I do want to look at anything that's going along this edge. This scalloped edge here, I like the way the scalloped edge works. So again, you could try to refine this, but watch what happens when you do. The refine tool is the next tool down. So again, the second brush down from the top. If you click on that, make it smaller so that this one you do want to do it on the edge. I'm going to click and drag it down along this entire edge and let go. And you'll see it knocked all of that scalloping out. And I don't want that. That scalloping is the actual knitting part. It's the ribbing of the knitting part. So in my case, I think this did a worse job. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. I'm bringing back that scalloped edge. I like that part. I like what's going on in the hand here and all of this. A part that a lot of people missed is this little part of skin that's right here on the wrist. This one looks good for me. I'm going to come up and look at this edge. That all looks good to me. The edge that goes up next to her hand is working well. The edge along her sweater is also working well. So this guy actually looks really good to me. I don't need to do anything else with this. I'm going to zip back out just to make sure. And yeah, I mean, I'm really liking the way this looks. So I'm simply going to come over here, scroll down to the bottom of your right-hand side, and to your output here, you need to make sure that this is being output to, I'm going to click on this drop-down mask, to a layer mask. I've already got the new layer, so I just need to put a mask on it. So I'm going to click on, say, put a layer mask on it, and I'm just going to hit OK. And this looks really good to me. I'm going to zoom in and take a look at it. The only thing that I'm missing was that little bit of area that was going behind her neck, but I'm also missing sweater on the other side. We'll take a look at that in just 1 second. So to find those, go ahead and go up to the top of your channels palette. I need to temporarily turn off my layer mask to see the whole edge, to see the whole image. I could click on the new version here so that I can see everything, or you simply hover over your layer mask, hold down your shift key and click to put a black X on it. I need to be able to see this line right here, this part of the mask that's her sweater that's in the back, and there's also part on the other side we need to get. So I'm gonna go after this with the pen tool, the P key, and I'm simply going to click, and I'm going to, again, this is not a straight line in here. Try to make this a little bit more organic in all of this, and then come down to the skin part and pull that out, and then simply finish this up, and then come back. Now that's one part of that I need to add to the sweater. But if you go on to the other side, you'll see that there's another part that's right up by her thumbnail. We also need to pen tool this in. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to click. She's got a thumbnail that's showing on the top. You do not want to include that thumbnail inside your selection. So I'm going to select right here and then come down and select there. Hold down my Option key to get rid of that second control handle. I'm going to click into here, and then I'm going to work my way up. Again, you're only wanting to select sweater. You don't want any skin in there, and you don't want any blue in there. And pull that out a little bit. So now I'm going to go back to my path palette, and I'm going to double click on the name work path, and I'm going to name this sweater bits. And say OK to that. So then to use this, I am going to command click on this to load them. But now I need to soften these up slightly. Again, the pen tool is too perfect a tool to do this with. So I'm going to go up to the select menu, down to modify, down to feather, and I'm going to feather this a half a pixel, 0.5, and say OK. Then I'm going to go back to my layer mask in my layers palette. I'm going to click on it to get rid of the red X. You can see I've got an active selection on this side, and I have one on the other side as well. So these need to show me the sweater underneath them. That means that right now this part of the mask is black. It's hiding those parts. I need it to show me those parts, so I'm just going to fill these with white. Again, to fill with white, white is my background color, Command delete, Command D to deselect, and now I've got all of my sweater bits. I've got the part that's up by her thumb, and I've got the part that's going back by her neck. I've got all of the sweater. So, and then up to save my work.
I don't remember what to do after selecting the pencil.
So have you got an active selection going?
I haven't made it active. They're all.
So you've drawn the pen tool out. So go to your path palette.
Right.
Did you name it something, or is it still called work path?
Work path.
Double click on it. You want to name it because otherwise it's temporary. And then hover over the icon, hold down the Command key, and click. It'll load it as a selection. Go back to your layers palette now. Select the layer mask that it's actually on, that we're going to work on. Is the mask selected? You got the borders around the black part. You're just going to fill it. Is white your foreground or your background color?
Black.
No, you're going to fill this with white
Oh,
though,
with white.
because you want to reveal the sweater that's underneath it. So fill it with white, and you should see these parts.
Stop seeing the rest of it.
So again, you got these active parts, and that's on there. So again, you want to fill with, you need to get rid of your generative fill thing here. Just click on the little 3 icon buttons and just say hi to Sky. Again, so white is your background color. So Command Delete will fill that with black in your mask. And you've got to turn off the divergence down here and turn that off right there, and now you see them.
Oh.
So did this work for everyone? Okay, guys, we're almost there. I know it doesn't feel like it, but we are. Okay, I'm going to make another copy of New Version. So go down to the bottom and click on it. Command J to make another copy. It says I can't do that because it's locked. I say that that's not true. Oh, I've still got an active selection going, sorry. Command D to deselect, and then Command J. It makes a new copy of it, drag it all the way to the top above the new sweater part. Double click on this, and we're gonna call this hair. I think it's gonna be hair, yeah. H-A-I-R. Make it visible. And so double click on the hand to zip all the way back out. So I'm going to try to make a selection of, I take that back. I'm not going to select the hair. I'm going to make this skin. Double click on this and call it skin. It's less complicated. Okay, so I'm going to make this selection of the skin. That's what I'm going to go after here. So again, you can zip in here. I'm going to try the Select and Mask workspace again for this. I think it's still probably the best. Again, I'm running into the very same problem before. I can't separate the skin from her sweater. They're almost identical in tone. So that's not going to work for me. So I'm actually going to go after this using Select and Mask again. So again, with the skin one selected, make sure that you've got everything else turned off underneath it. Otherwise, you won't be able to see where their selection actually is. Up to the select menu, down to Select and Mask. And you get this, you know, the haze over the entire image part. Go up to the very top tool again on the left-hand side. This is the quick selection tool. Make it considerably bigger using your bracket keys. And then again, I'm just going to start to click in this area to try to get this to select just the skin. Now, if it selects other parts, don't worry about that necessarily. So it's selected all of the hair on this side. That part's okay. I'm not too concerned about that yet. I feel like I've got a good selection on this side over here. So I need to now remove the blue background on my left-hand side and the hair. To do that, you simply hold down the Option key. And even though you should be able to see the little icon that's in the middle of this quick selection tool, right now, if you don't have any Option key, if you don't hold the Option key down, there's a plus in there. If you could see that plus, good luck. But anyway, holding down the Option key changes that plus to a minus. And then again, we're simply going to click, but you don't want this to touch anything. You don't want it to touch the edge. You want it to find the edge. And then I'm going to come across the very top of her head. Again, you can't do this if you're not on the pasteboard because as you bring your cursor across the top, it will change out of the cursor and it'll just become the regular mouse guy again. So that's gotten rid of parts of this, but obviously I've got an edge here that's a serious problem here. So I'm going to zoom into this edge. I'm going to try the automatic refine hair tool. So you'll see right up here, there's a button up in the very top of the options bar at the top that says refine hair. I'm just going to click on that and see what it does. And in my case, it did nothing. So I'm going to hit Command Z because I'm not sure it did some stuff. It did stuff over on the side that I don't want to have done. So anyway, that's not going to work for me. So instead, I'm going to go to the second tool down, the second paintbrush down. This is the Refine Edge tool. I'm going to make mine a little bit larger. And I'm going to simply paint down along this line of hair where it's actually meeting the skin. Make sure that you get enough. You want both hair and skin in all of this, so don't leave yourself short, and let go and see what happens. So this is beginning to give me something in here. I might be able to, again, there's no reason to hit this a second time. This tool does not work progressively. I'm going to also do the same thing on her fingers. And yeah, that part's kind of okay. We'll be able to refine that mask a little bit more. Then I'm going to try the other side as well. So I'm going to click on the other side and just run it down here and see what that does. At this stage of the game, now that I've done that, I'm going to do a Command Z back and forth to see if this changes. And I kind of like the way that it's actually looking right now. And then I'm also going to run this across the very top of her forehead. So I've pretty much circled the whole part of her face where the skin is actually meeting the background part. Now I've got some problems in here that I'm going to have to fix. Like I've still got that sweater part that's in here. I've got blue background that's in here that I need to actually get rid of. I'm not going to do any of that using any of these tools right now. There's better tools for that. So I'm going to go ahead and say, again, my output is to a layer mask. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. So this is actually giving me a beginning part of this, and we'll sort of see how it actually looks. I'm missing some of the fingers over here, all that kind of stuff. If you hold down your Option key and you click on the mask, you can see this is what's basically going on in here. So in this case, I want to sort of open up some parts of this. I want to fix some other parts of this, and I can do this pretty quickly. So I'm going to click back on the mask itself, or the image itself, so I can see the whole image. The first problem I've got is this whole area that's where I got background and part of the sweater showing. So I'm going to hit this really quickly using the pen tool. So P key, again, everybody says, oh no, God, no, I don't want to use this tool. I'm going to do everything I can to avoid it. And so then you end up spending hours actually doing this part, and you don't want to spend those hours doing this part. And I'm also going to do the background and sweater part. I normally would be able to use the sweater as selection part, but I need to get the background as well. So you might as well go ahead and just accept it and do the whole shebang. I'll give you guys a second. We're almost home. Yeah.
When I select the mask, how do I get the brushes back on this?
No, hit the tab key. There we go. Hit the F key. Let's try that really quick. Then F key again. And now hit your tab key. Hit tab key again. Save your work and restart this. So does everybody have those two parts almost selected? I'll wait. All right, we're going to move on. So whatever you've got selected, just go ahead and finish it up. Again, this isn't homework. You're not going to turn this in. And if you only get one of these areas knocked out, fine. You'll still see where this is all going. So back over to the path palette again, and this time I'm going to rename my work path background bits. And say OK. Then I'm going to hover over the icon of background bits, hold down my Command key and click to load it as a selection. And then I'm going to go back to my layers palette Now again, and click on this skin mask to actually use it. But first, again, I need to soften that edge just a little bit. The pen tool is too sharp, too precise. So up to the select menu, down to feather, down to modify, down to feather, and a half a pixel is fine. Hit OK. And now again, this part I want to hide. If you take a look at my image right now, all I want is the skin to show. So to get this to hide, I need to fill this part of my mask with black. Black conceals, white reveals. So I've got my layer mask is selected. Black is now my foreground color, so Option Delete, Command D to deselect. Now this clipped her skin. I was being very cavalier about doing that. So I'm going to fix that right now. I'm going to hold down my Shift key and temporarily disable the mask. And it's this area right in here. I should have just run it straight up along this line. I didn't, so I'm going to just fix it now. Again, pen tool for me. If you guys didn't make the same mistake I did, you don't need to worry about it. I'm zipping all the way back around. In this case, I can leave it as a temporary work path. I'm just going to Command click to load this. Go back to my layers palette, turn on my layer mask, and now this area I want to show. So this part selection that I've made, I'm going to feather it really quickly. And then this fills with white so that it shows. White is my background color, Option Delete, Command D to deselect. So then I'm going to double click on the hand, and looking around at everything else, the only thing that I'm still feeling iffy about is this edge of hair right here. So I feel like I could clean this up a little bit better. I also feel like the fingers could be a little bit better on here as well. So to see what this mask is actually doing along with your background, we're going to temporarily turn off the, actually I take it back. I'm going to turn on the new version underneath. So it'll allow us to really see basically where the problem is. So I've got a problem with the finger right here. So I've got my top one selected right here. So this is a little bit tricky here, but you guys are up for this. I know you're up for this. So with the background version turned on, you can see the whole image. On the very top, we've only got the skin on, and I've got the mask is actually selected. You can see it's got the borders around it. But I want to see these at the same time. So to do that, come over to your channels palette and click on the eyeball right next to it. And you can see what it does is it puts this red cast over the whole image. It is the red cast of this mask. It's showing you basically what is being covered in this and what's not being covered in this. However, in this case, I'm seeing everything in here, and I don't want to actually see that part. So let me see what happens if I turn the new version off. Yeah. This will show me where my problem area actually is. And you can see the transition in here, but I do have the part in here that I thought I was missing. I've actually got it in here. So I'm not going to confuse you any more than I already have. I'm going to simply turn the eyeball off on that. But what I am going to do is try to go after a little bit of this edge using an overlay brush. So all the way back up to the top with the skin selected. Make sure that the mask is actually selected as well. Hit the B key to get a brush. Make it an overlay brush. 100% opacity, 100% flow. Make it a soft brush, completely soft. Mine is. And then using an overlay brush, what I want to do is I want to push this selection back. So I want to show more skin. This is like hiding skin. So I want to be painting with white to reveal that skin. So I'm going to hit the X key to get white as my foreground color. I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller, and then I'm simply going to start working my way into this to start to try to reveal some of that skin and the edge of that hair, and I'm actually doing a pretty good job. If you feel like this is a little too aggressive, and I feel like it actually is a little too aggressive, I'm going to go back in history to undo all of those brush strokes to bring it back. I'm going to then change the flow of my brush here. So have we talked about flow and opacity in this class? Now would be the time. So I need everybody to create just a brand new file for me, a synthetic file. Command N to bring up the new dialog box. And inside it, I'm going to set my drop down to inches, and I'm going to do 10 by 8 I'm just making a blank screen to work on by 300 pixels. If you have the new dialog box, you're just looking for an 8x10 that we can actually look at. And so this is basically just a blank white thing to paint on. Is everybody good on this part? Okay. I am going to hit the B key to get a brush. Make sure it's a normal brush. I'm going to change the edge of my brush to be completely hard. D key to get my foreground and background colors to default to black and white. I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger. And I'm simply going to paint across the top. And you can see it's just a black line that we painted across the top. Everybody have this? Anybody not have this? Do you have the white? Okay, you're good now? We all good? Okay, I'm going to drop the opacity down to 50%. You can get close. It doesn't have to be exactly 50%. Mine is. So what I want you to do now is this. Just watch me do this first, and then you go in and do it. I'm going to click and drag across, but I'm not going to pick up my cursor off of my stylus now. I'm going to just start going back and forth and back and forth. And what you see happen is that it will only lay down 50% gray. What it's really doing is it's looking at the foreground color, which is black, and it's looking at the background color, which is white, and it's going right in the middle. But as long as I don't pick my stylus up and I just keep going back and forth, I don't build any additional density. So I need everybody to do this right now. Just keep going back and forth, and you'll see any place where you're starting to paint outside the lines, it's going to add to that. But if you stick in the middle, no matter how much you go back and forth, again, I've never picked my cursor up. I'm not adding any density at all. But now I am going to pick up my cursor. So I'm going to lift my mouse up, my cursor off of my tablet, or if you're doing this with the mouse, just let go of the mouse, and then lay down a second layer. So when you click on the second layer, most people would expect this thing to go black. Again, we had 50%, now we're doing another 50%. But that's not what happens. What it's doing is it's going halfway between my foreground color, which is black, and that gray that's underneath it, that 50% gray. So what I'm really getting here is a 75%. But again, as I go back and forth, I'm not picking up any density at all. Nothing is actually being added to it. If I lift my mouse up again and then hit it a third time, I can start to build actually closer density, but this is still halfway between black and what was already there, so it's not a pure black yet. You can see the difference in the line above it. And then finally, you can keep doing this forever. Theoretically, you'll never get to black because it's only going halfway between, halfway between, halfway between, halfway between. Eventually, Photoshop shows that it's being black. So did that work for everyone? So that's how you build, that's what opacity is about. Drag your opacity up to 100% and then take your flow and bring your flow down to like 10%. Flow you typically work with incredibly low levels. It's not unusual for me to be working with flow at 1 or 2%. And now do the same trick. Click and start to drag across and then come back and forth, and you can see, in my case, that 11 is even too high. So I'm gonna hit Command Z to undo that. I'm going to drag my flow all the way down to 1% and just start to drag back and forth. And you can see over time you build up density. So this gives you more control. It doesn't take off so quick on you. If you use opacity, it builds, it doubles every single time. If you're using flow, you can really get this to be slow, which is what we're wanting to do. So if you've done all that, I need to get rid of this image, but again, I'm on the pasteboard, and when you're on the pasteboard, you can only see a single image. So hit your F key once to go to the black pasteboard, the F key again to get back to the little stoplights. Then you can get the stoplights and you can close up the image that actually we looked in to see the difference in flow and opacity. You don't need to save it. So now I am going to use my overlay brush on this mask. So again, I've got my skin mask selected. I'm going to make sure it's a completely soft brush. I'm going to change its blending mode to overlay. I'm going to drop my flow down to 1 so that I can scrub this in slowly to watch what happens here. Again, I want skin to show, so I'm going to be painting with white, and then I just start scrubbing in here, and you can see it starts to come in. Now in my case, I don't feel like that's quite fast enough, so I'm going to bump my flow up to like a 5 or a 6 or an 8, something like that, and trying to do the same thing. And you can see that just took off right on me. So I'm going to Command Z to undo that and bring my flow down to like a 4, a 3 or 4, and start to scrub in. Yeah, much better control. And come down to just try to bring in a little bit more of that part. But now what you'll also notice that's happening here, if I double click on the hand, I've got some lines in here that shouldn't be in here. So if you take a look at this shoulder line right here, I've also got the sweater is also right here. That's part is showing in the back. But you remember in my case, so the sweater that's right by her neck is still in this. I need to get rid of that. So if I go back to my path palette, remember I had that thing called sweater bits. I'm going to hover over sweater bits icon, hold down the Command key, click. It loads that little thing as a selection. And then again, I just need to fill this. I need it to be hidden. So working on my mask for this, black is my background color. Command delete gets rid of that. Command D to deselect. And now I've got just this little bitty, you see a very sort of thin line on this that's actually going on this. I can get rid of that just using a brush. The B key, change it to normal. Take your flow all the way back up. Make sure it is a completely hard brush. And make it much smaller. And then just paint, oops, undo. Make sure that black is your foreground color. And just paint that out. And we are done. So this is where I'm going to leave my hair. This has got my skin in here. Again, I'm going to save my work, Command S, just to save it. But now I've got one final one to make. Yes?
When I paint with white around to get more skin, nothing happens.
So, are you on overlay?
Yes.
Okay. So, you're on overlay. Take your flow all the way up and let's just see if hitting it completely hard will actually do it. And you may have a selection going. Hit Command D to make sure that you don't have a selection going, and now try to paint again. No, then you painted it out as much as you're going to get this out.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so we got one final thing to go, and it's the easiest of all masks to make. This is the one that fucked all of you up. Or not this one, but this whole process. So I have 3 of them done. There's only one left. Why don't I just use the 3 I've made and subtract those from an alpha channel, from a regular channel, and it should leave me what I'm missing, wouldn't you think? It will. So to do that, again, I'm going to turn all of these guys back on. If you do that, so right now you can see, if I scroll down here, I have got my skin mask and I've got my blue background. Those are the only ones that I've really got. Those are the only ones that I really need to do this with. If you wanted to save these, if for some reason you weren't sure that you were going to keep using the masks on your layers, you can actually save these guys. So let's say I want to save the skin one. I can turn the skin one on, and it is selected up at the very top. You can see it's highlighted. If you click on the sweater one, you'll see the sweater one becomes this temporary mask. That's what's actually showing here. So I'm going to go back up to the skin one, and I'm simply going to grab this temporary skin mask. You can see the reason they call it's a temporary. See that hash mark that's next to it? They used to actually do the temporary ones in italics, which was a much better interface to work with. But it is what it is. Simply grab that skin mask and drag it down to the little square with a plus in the middle of it, and it will make this thing called skin mask. I'm going to get rid of the word that says copy. Then I'm going to go over to my layers panel, and I'm going to click on the sweater mask. And again, don't worry about if you see red here, that kind of stuff. If you scroll up, you'll see there's a sweater mask that's got that same little backslash against it. Drag it down to the little square with the plus in the middle of it. Double click on it to get rid of the word copy. And those are the 3 that I've made that I actually need. So if I come all the way back down to my new version, down at the very bottom, and click on that, hold down my option key so that it is the only thing that shows, you'll see that you've got a blue background knockout, you've got a skin mask, and then a sweater. I'm going to rename the skin mask, and I'm going to call it skin knockout to just keep it separate from the mask.
Can you do that one more time?
Sure.
I
What?
wasn't seeing the skin mask at first, but I just found it again.
Okay, so just copy it by dragging it down to the little square with the plus at the bottom. And then instead of getting rid of just the word that says copy, just rename it skin knockout. KNOCKOUT. And the same thing with the sweater mask. I'm going to just rename that sweater knockout.
The original sweater mask?
Yeah, if you select the sweater mask itself, click on that layer, it'll show up as this sweater mask with this backslash. Just drag that down to the square with a little plus in the middle and rename that copy sweater knockout. So then when I go back to my new version at the very bottom, I'm going to turn off all the eyeballs on the back right here. I'm going to pull out my channels palette so that you can really see what I have and what you should have, what it looks like. So this is what I've got. I've got the RGB composite up at the very top. I've got my red, green, and blue, and then I've got a blue knockout, a skin knockout, and a sweater knockout. Does everybody have this? You can pull your channel out. Just grab the tab, pull it out, and you can make it really big. All the work that we're going to do right now is going to be in this area, so you might as well be able to see it.
Do you still need the original sweater mask?
You can't get rid of it. Just if you select a different layer, select the new version at the bottom, it'll go away. It's only showing you the mask because you had that layer selected. It's only showing because this thing shows up here. So, everybody good on this part? The what? So again, do you have a layer that has a skin mask on it? We just made it. Select that layer, select the mask, and now it shows up. So where's your channels? So again, it's right here. Click on this and drag it down, make a copy of it. Or rename that. Well, you're going to rename that sweater knockout, and underneath it you've got the skin mask. So, we did the wrong one. This was the sweater, this wasn't the skin. Go up to the very top and click on the skin. Yeah. And then go to your channels palette. And then again, you're going to copy the skin mask, drag that down. And call that skin knockout. Perfect. And then, yeah, you got everything you want. So the background's not complete. But you still have what you want. Grab this channel and pull it all the way out. Just grab it and then make it big. Yeah, perfect. So what we've got now, come back to your layers palette. And click on this layer and go down here. So now you've got the three things that we need to work with. So we've got in our channels palette, you can see I've got the blue background, I've got the skin knockout, and I've got the sweater knockout. I've got all three of those. So to build the last one, we're simply going to use the ones that we already have. To do that, you're simply going to start with a blank channel. So just come to the bottom of your channels palette and click on the square with the little plus in the middle. You'll see that it comes up and it's called Alpha 1. And what this is that these things are called alpha channels. So if you haven't given something a name, it just Photoshop names it Alpha 1. And then if you were to do it again, it would be Alpha 2. And again, Alpha 3, again, Alpha 4. But we're going to rename ours the thing that's missing, and it's the hair knockout. So double click on it and just do hair knockout. We're almost done, guys, I swear, and we'll take a break. Hair knockout. And so I just need to make this, right? So in this case, what I want to do is I want to use my other masks to hide things. So I'm going to invert this channel to make it white. So Command I, it now has made it white because I want it to show the hair. I'm going to hover over my blue background knockout. Don't select it, just hover over it. Command click to load that as a selection. You'll see if you actually have this image out to the side, you'll see you have marching ants on all of this. In your hair knockout alpha channel, we do not want the blue background to show. We only want the hair to show. So I'm going to fill this with black. Black is my foreground color. Option delete fills it with black. Option delete should fill that with black, but it's not.
Turning it to white didn't work for me.
Command click. Oh, sorry, I'm filling it with, no. Option delete. You did what?
Shift delete to fill it with black.
Yeah, but again, option delete. I'm just trying to fill. Well, here, let's try. This is bizarre because should not work this way. I've only done this 100,000 times. I'm going to come up to the edit menu, down to fill, and I'm going to fill this with black and say OK. That's so bizarre that keyboard shortcut is not working. But nonetheless, the fill does. So everybody, again, you've made a selection with white. So Sage, was your alpha channel white?
No, it's black still.
So invert it, Command I.
I did, but it's doing something weird.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got a selection still going. Hit Command Z to undo that. And no, Command Z, Command Z, Command Z. Good. And now Command D to get rid of that selection. And now you've just got this Command I, it'll invert it, it'll be white.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go over this again. I'm going to take this from the top. I'm going to throw away this alpha channel. Don't ask me why that keyboard shortcut is not working, because it's worked my whole life, but there you go. So I've only got my 3 channels here, my 3 knockouts. I'm going to add a brand new alpha channel just by clicking on the icon at the bottom of my channels palette. It's a, never mind, because I've still got a selection going, so let me undo that. Command D to deselect, and now I'm going to add an alpha channel. Double click on it, and I'm going to call this hair knockout. I want to invert this now so that it shows the hair, Command I, and now I'm going to load my blue background knockout as a selection. So simply hover over the icon, hold down the Command key, click to load it as a selection. Now you can see that this hair knockout channel is still the active channel. That's why it's highlighted. So I need to just fill this with a black. So up to the edit menu, down to fill, and fill it in the drop-down menu, black, and say OK. Command D to deselect. Then I'm going to go to my next skin knockout, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hover over the thumbnail, Command click to load the skin as a knockout because I don't want the skin to show. I'm still working on my hair knockout. Up to the edit menu, down to fill, and fill with black. And then finally, Command D to deselect. Finally, I'm going to go after the sweater. So again, coming down to the sweater knockout, hover over the thumbnail for the sweater, hold down the Command key, click to load it as a selection. We're still working on the hair knockout, and you are going to fill that with black as well. And say OK. Yes?
Is there a difference between using Command delete to fill or Option delete?
If yours are working, I would use the keyboard shortcuts. Mine were not.
Was there a difference between the two? Like if you use Command delete or Option delete?
One is foreground and the other is background. So it just if you flip them, your foreground and background color, it has nothing to do with, it's always the foreground color. If the foreground color is white and you use Option delete, it fills with white. But if your foreground color is black and you use Option delete, it fills it with black. If we were on not on a channel, but on a layer, you could fill with color. You could fill with red or blue or whatever, but you can't fill with color in channels. Channels are only grayscale.
Part of my sweater is not selecting.
That's because you've never built that in your channel. Look at your channel. The sweater, it's not there. Don't worry, you're getting the gist of this all. So guys, we're almost done. So remember I talked about the dovetailing part. So I'm going to go up to my window right here, and I'm going to come down to my workspace, and I'm going to reset my workspace to put my channels back where they belong. And I've got a little bit more work to do on this. You can see that there are these white edges that should not be here on this guy. I'm going to get rid of them all. Again, all of this is designed to do is show the hair. So I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. Make sure it is a completely hard brush, because you don't want to paint any, you don't want to spill into the hair. And black is my foreground color, 100% opacity, 100% flow, and I'm simply going to click and paint all of this black. Anything in here that is not going to be hair, like all of this part can go black. This can all go, this line can all go. I'm not going to go up any tighter on that than it is. And I'm going to get rid of this and this and this. And then I'm going to load this as a selection. So again, I'm going to hover, I'm going to come back over to my layers palette. I need to make one last copy of a new version. So again, I'm going to click on the new version, Command J to create a new copy, drag it all the way up to the very top, rename this hair, and say OK. Come back over to your channel, go all the way down to the bottom to the hair knockout channel, hover over the icon of it, hold down the Command key, click to load that as a selection, and then add it as a layer mask up at the very top. And then turn off new version down at the bottom, and we'll see how we did. Turn everybody else back on. So I'm going to turn my selections on, my layers on. And blue background, where are you? Oh, my blue background had been inverted, so I'm just going to invert it back. And this is what my selection looks like. And so you can see I do have dovetail issues here, but the hair part's actually pretty good in here. This one's actually pretty good, all things considered. The background is pretty good in terms of where it's going out onto the blue background. The sweater's actually pretty good. All of this stuff seems pretty good. I'll show you what the dovetail problem is when we get back from our break, but I want to show you one last thing right now. Why did we go to all of this trouble? Because you're looking at this and you're saying, well, Versa, that's just fucked up. I don't care about this. Turn off all of your layers that you use to make all of this shit. So turn off the hair layer, the skin layer, the sweater layer, and the blue background layer. Turn on your new version. Double click on the hand so that you can kick all the way back out. I want to change the background color. Actually, I want to take it back. I'm going to go after the sweater first. I want to change the sweater first. So has everybody got this just like the image started with? We good? Okay, so I'm going to click all the way on the very top layer. Even I don't want to turn it on, but I'm going to do some color adjustments up at the very top. So that's the only reason I want to put this on the top. I don't want to start putting it in between all of these masks. I'm going to come over to my channel part, and I'm going to find my sweater knockout. I'm going to Command click on my sweater knockout, and then I'm going to come over to my adjustment layers. So again, the icon at the bottom of the layers palette that is a circle that's half black and half white, click on that and come up, and we are going to add a solid color on top of, oh, take that back. We're not going to add a solid color. I'm going to hit cancel. I've still got that selection going. I'm going to do hue saturation, sorry. Click on this, and I'm going to add a hue saturation layer on top of this. So you'll see that whenever you have an active selection going and you add an adjustment layer, it automatically adds it with a mask. So this has now got it masked, and all I want you to do is come up to the hue and start to drag it, and we'll just change the color of that sweater to anything you want. Oh, you think that's too saturated? Just drop the saturation of it. Oh, let's make this a pale pink. Are you excited about Easter? I'm excited only about Easter because the worst candy in the world, the candy that I love the most, the only time it ever comes out really is, well, Peeps, that's my wife's favorite, but you can get Peeps a lot. You're right, though, it's really focused. Like right now, you can get every Peep in the world, every flavor. I'm trying to think of the ones I like. They do this weird candy-like one, and it only comes out like around Easter. But anyway, no, but I adore Brock's Jelly Eggs licorice only.
Oh,
And so they have bags that are nothing but licorice, and it only happens at Easter. And I got my first one yesterday, and I've already eaten half of it, which is why I call it the evil candy that's coming. Anyway, sorry. Did somebody ask me something over here?
Yeah.
What?
I got it,
Okay.
but I just wanted to know, like, why is it only changing the color?
Because you're only changing the color.
Oh,
You
I
can
meant,
actually
like, the
drag
white.
other sliders here. You can take the lightness slider and make it lighter. Or darker.
No, I meant, like, why is it?
Bless
Well,
you.
I
Why is it
guess
just a sweater?
Yeah.
'Cause
No,
you
I
have a
meant,
mask.
why is the white not really changing?
Oh, because white has no color.
Oh,
My neck hurts.
I don't know. I just saw that.
Okay, wait, guys. Hello, this gets better. Come back over to your channels again, and I want you, this time we're gonna select the blue background. I'm not gonna select it, I'm just gonna hover over the icon, command click to load that as a selection. Come back over, I'm gonna add another hue adjustment layer on top of this. And again, take the slider and let's make this, I don't know, purple to match the sweater. Oh, that works. Oh, let's do one more. Come back over again to the to your channels palette. Command click over the hair icon to load the hair as a selection. Let's add a hue adjustment saturation layer on that. And we can tint her hair red. In my case, I'm not getting any color in the red, and that's because her hair is black. So instead, double click on this to remove that part, and instead, see the little button underneath it where it says colorize?
Yeah, I love
Click on colorize.
I love colorized.
Red hair. But look at these, look at this, zoom in. We were all worried about whether that would actually work on a hair on her head. Look at how well that's done. There's a small little bit of hair right in here that's not picked up that red color. So if I really cared about this part a lot, I could take a really small brush. Again, I would make white my foreground color because I want it to show. X key to make white my foreground color. I'm going to drop my flow down. And I can start to work in this area right in here just to sort of add some red color to this part in here, just to sort of make that a little bit more believable. And I'm done.
So when your brush is selected while you're on this specific layer, you can also like use it to color things.
Oh, totally. Like right now, if you want her eyebrows to be the same thing, let's just paint her eyebrows.
That's so nice. I didn't know colorized worked that way.
Not that I really think that. I would probably try to make a selection of her hair, of her eyebrows, and do that better. But yeah, but the cleanup part is great. Questions about any of this? Okay, I've got 4:02. Make this a hard 10. Be back at 10 after. We've got some great tricks to show you to finish this up. So,
Mercer, I still don't have my brushes.
what?
I still don't have my brushes on here.
Oh, hang on one second. We'll figure this out. Okay, I've got everything turned off except for the blue background. Underneath it, I've selected the layer underneath it because I want to add a layer on top so that it's underneath the blue background. So I'm going to click on the Add Adjustment layer and come up and add Solid Color. And when mine opens up, because black is my foreground color, it opens up as black. I want it to be white. So you get if you take your cursor away from the color picker, it'll actually hover over anything. It will actually allow you to pick the color. So I'm just coming over to pick my background color, which is white. Or you could simply type in 255, 255, 255, just to get white and say okay. And now what you should have is the blue background, and the girl is now white because again, the mask is hiding the girl completely, showing the blue background, but then I've got white underneath it. Did that work for everybody? So again, but I want the background to be white, not the girl. So I'm just going to click on the blue background mask and invert it, Command I. And now you've got this girl on a white background. And it's a pretty good knockout. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah, I mean, it looks good. So the problem I have on it though is I've got spill. So if you take a look at this, what I've got is there's blue spill coming through these edges. So that is not, I mean, that is exactly how it should be. The thing is that you want background to be coming through it. You want to actually be able to see that part that's coming through it. But you don't want it to be blue because it's no longer blue. It's now white. So I've got to remove the blue that's actually coming through it. Does that make sense, everyone, what's going on? So this is what's called spill, and this is how we actually get rid of spill. So this is a destructive move. So again, on my blue background, I'm going to do this work on the girl layer, but realize that this is a destructive move. That's okay because I've still got my new virgin down here. If I screw something up horribly, I can always go back to my new virgin. So I don't mind doing damage. I don't mind doing destructive moves to layers that are up on top as long as I've got a virgin that I can recover from in case something goes wrong. Does that make sense, everyone? So what we're going to do is we're going to use a brush to get rid of this spill. So hit the B key to get a brush. Make sure that this is a completely soft brush. And make sure that it is 100% opacity, 100% flow. But now what we're going to do, and also I want to be on the pasteboard for this. So go ahead and hit the F key to get to the pasteboard, just because I want to be able to work outside and come in on this top area that's actually up in here as well. I make my brush a little bit larger. And then you're going to change the blending mode of your brush from normal all the way down to color. And when we do that, what happens with this is that, I'm going to show you what will happen with this. What happens with this is that the brush respects the luminosity. It lets the luminosity of your image remain. It does not change that. What it does is it actually changes the color. So to see what happens here, I want you to go back really quickly, go back to normal. So just go back to normal. And then I want you to hover over the hair with your brush. And then if you want to sample that color and make it your foreground color, you hold down the Option key. And again, temporarily your brush will change to a color picker. And if you click on it, it will then load that color as your foreground color. And then if we come over to her skin, so I'm going to paint right on her forehead. I'm going to click and then paint right through all of that. And you can see it does everything. It changes the color, but it also changes the luminosity. That is not how to remove spill. So hit Command Z to undo that. Instead, now change your blending mode of your brush from normal down to color. So again, what is going to happen now is that it's going to change the color, but it is going to leave luminosity alone. So now paint across your image, and you can see the luminosity remains. Her eyes are still there, her eyebrows are still there, but we've painted with, again, essentially black, because that's the color of her hair. So we've changed that completely. Yes?
What if color is grayed out?
Then you're... I don't know. Because you're on mask. You need to be on your pixel layer, because that's where you're going to do the work. And that should be good. Does this make sense what's going on here? Okay, so hit Command Z if you've done all of that to get that off of her. Instead, I'm going to simply do that on her hair. So again, the trick to this is you don't want to change the color of any hair that you don't need to change the color of. So you don't want to start in her hair here. Look at my screen. You don't want to start in the hair in the center and come out. You want to start on the outside and come in. And you don't want to change anything that is not need fixing. So again, soft brush, I'm going to, again, resample. I'm going to hold down the Option key, resample the color. I'll make my brush even a little bit bigger. And then I'm simply going to start painting down here. And you can see it removes all the blue spill. When you get near her fingers, you need to stop. You need to go to a completely hard brush near her fingers, or you will spray your spill removal onto her fingers, and all of a sudden her fingers will be gray just like her forehead was. You also need to zoom in on this and make your brush considerably smaller, and then you can paint away the spill that's running right along the edge of her hand. Make your brush even smaller still to get the spill that's actually in the center in between all of those fingers. And then finally, zoom back out and go over. There's spill on the other side above her left shoulder. So back to a much larger brush. Also, I'm going to keep it as a hard brush as I do the stroke right next to her neck, but I'm going to get rid of that part, and then I'm actually going to go back to a softer brush so that so it blends it actually into the rest of the skin, the rest of the hair better. And then take a look at this. Are you kidding me? Look at this image.
With the reflection on the.
So yeah, anything. So if there's a reflection on her skin, you'll pick like, especially when we do green screen, you'll see green reflections in. Sometimes what you'll see happens this way too is that sometimes we're going to look at another image here that will remove spill, and we'll remove spill a couple of other times. Sometimes when you do the removal color, it's too strong, and so realize that every time you do it again, it recolors it. So you can actually drop your flow way down and actually recolor it a different color and blend stuff in. But yeah, there's other stuff that you'll see spill, like on her sweater, there's spill that's sitting right up here at the top. This is a kind of a twofer here at the top. We can remove the spill color here, but you'll see it'll still leave a darker line up at the very top. That darker lines actually should be there, but we can do it here again. So B key to get a brush, hold down your option key to sample the white color, and then you can paint through this to remove that spill. Where it gets to be yellow, you would hold down your option key and click on the yellow part, and then you can remove the spill there. You'll see that I've got, again, that weird background part that's happening to me. So that's how you would actually remove it where you've got color as well. Questions about any of this? Come on, guys. Yes.
Sampling the background color is then you can paint over that. Like, I'm not quite getting what sampling the background color.
Oh, here, do this then. Hold down your shift key and click on the layer mask for this, and look what you just did. I would call that pretty destructive, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
We've changed the entire background color. Everything that's coming through that, we've changed it completely to, this is the color of her hair. It's not the saturation or the brightness of her hair. That's all being controlled by luminosity. The mask is what's controlling that. So you still see the hair that was blue as dark because that is being controlled by the luminosity. We've basically just, the reason you're seeing this as gray is we've basically just removed the color. Does that make sense? When we do other work in here, it'll come in a little bit better, I think. So we may actually get to it in just a second. So got that, we got that, we got that. Okay. We're going to start your homework. We actually might finish it. I know, wouldn't that be sweet? So go to channel, go to class file number, so in class 5. Inside of that, there is a file.
We can close this one now.
Yeah. Actually, not. It's a different file, so that's okay. Inside your folder is a file called Choke and Spread. I want you to open that one up. And again, it'll open up. I'm on the paste board, so you lose the fact that I have 3 other images open. So we need to get back to the stoplights. So to get back to the stoplights, F key again to go to the black paste board, F key again to go back to how your image normally is. You can close up all the other images you've got. Just keep the Choke and Spread one open. Oh, I take that back. I don't want to do Choke and Spread. Never mind. Close that one up. We are going to do your homework. We'll do Choke and Spread next week. So go to inside your folder, number 5, go to the assignment folder. I lied. We're going to do, believe me, I'll get there. Trust me, I will get there. Okay, so inside the session 5 of the student folders, there is this folder called 201008115_ver_urban02. And if you click and open that up, you will see inside here, there are 2 CR2 files in here. You may have XMP files like I do. It doesn't matter. Just select both of those CR2 files. If you select one of the XMP files, it doesn't matter. None of this matters. We're actually going to change this as soon as we get into Camera Raw. Double click on them. And you should come into Camera Raw with something that looks like this. It's a girl on green. Everybody have this part? I don't know why my photos is opening, but okay. So our first move into this is to color white balance this. That's why I ask you to open up both of them. So to white balance this, go over to your panel on the left-hand side. Mine looks different than yours now. My color is under the basic panel. For all of you who are updated on the latest, greatest version of Camera Raw, it's going to be the color panel. Just open it up and you're going to click on the little targeting, the white balance tool, the thing that looks like an eyedropper. Come over, I'm going to zoom in on the color card and I'm going to click on the white patch, sorry, not the white patch, the gray patch that is right next to the red, and it will color balance your image. I only want to do that so that I can color balance the one that doesn't have the card in it. So once you've done that, come up to your thumbnails, and on your thumbnails, if you go on my thumbnails are on the left-hand side, yours might be there or it might be on the bottom, wherever you want them. Click on the little 3 dots that are in the top right-hand corner, and you will get a flyout menu, and you want to pick Select All. All that does is select the image as well that doesn't have the color card in it. Then right back to that very same spot, and then the top right-hand corner, click on the little 3 dots again, and come down and do Sync Settings. And all this will do when it opens up, say OK, it'll open up as the default. And the only thing we've changed in here is the white balance. So go ahead and say OK. It will now white balance the image that's underneath it. And so now when I click on the image that's underneath it, I'm good to go. It's actually color balanced and we're off to the races. So does everybody have a version of this girl on green? OK. Come down and click on Open Object, and this will bring it into Photoshop for you.
What did you do after select all?
I went right back to the same spot, the same little 3 dots. Click on it, and then the menu item you want to pick is Sync All, or Sync Settings. Did that work? This girl is color corrected correctly, although that does not look like this is their primary right now. Go back to your secondary, click on this, and then click on first off, you need to white balance this. Eyedropper, that, no, that one, yeah. That's not color balanced. Click on here, the little 3 dots, select all, little 3 dots, sync settings. Okay, now this girl is color balanced, so click on her. Although you're not set to open that as top again. All right, so everybody has this girl on green opened, right? Okay. So when I first started doing this, I went out and bought the $350 program to actually separate this girl off of green. I'm going to show you how to do this with Photoshop and save you $350. So I know, isn't that nice? So all of you, if you want to send me a check for half that amount, because, you know, we should share, right? Oh, that's right. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay, so we're going to do this. This is a trick that I learned years ago from an insanely good retoucher in New York. It's a little complicated. I'm going to talk you through what it is we're really doing and how we're doing it and all of that kind of stuff. But what I'm getting ready to show you can actually change your life. So hopefully I've still got this recording. I do. Okay, so we are going to, how many people in this room are using actions in Photoshop? Okay, well that's going to change. So for the rest of you, so what actions are in Photoshop are there ways to do something that you're going to do over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Why would you take the time to do all of that. You can build this into an action that you simply run, and it will do all the work automatically for you. So that's what we're going to build to not only knock this out, but you'll see, again, the other things that you can actually do with the tool. So I need you to just follow this with me, do all the steps that I do. If I get ahead of you or you fall behind in a step, stop me, because this is an action you're going to use for the rest of the semester. You will use it for your homework as well. So it's not that you have to use, if you don't want to use the action and you can just remember all of these steps, fine, then you don't need to use the action, but that seems silly to me. So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to do other things in this class that'll also be actions. And so anyway, so to do it, the first thing that we're actually going to do on this is start to record this action, to build an action. So to do that, go to your Actions tab. It should be right next to your history if you're using our workspace. Click on it, and then you'll have, again, a menu to the right of the tab that says Actions. If you click on that flyout menu, you can come up to the top and say, you want to do a new action. So again, I'm just going to click on this new action, and a dialog box will open up, and it'll say, okay, it's going to name it, and then it's going to put it in a set for me. Now, I have got many sets of actions. So actions you can actually group together. So for instance, you could have a whole series of actions that are just for retouching, and then you could have a whole series of actions that are just for color grading, and a whole series of actions that are just for tonal correction. I mean, you can do all these separate ones. The whole set right here it's just designed to allow you to organize. That's all. In your all's case, because you don't use them, you will have a default actions set up, and it's fine for us to go ahead and put this action in that set. So I'm just going to leave this at that. However, we want to rename this action, and you're going to rename this action 0 selective color. And now I abbreviate the selected part because otherwise the name gets too long. So 0, Z-E-R-O, select, S-E-L, color. You'll see why in just a second. I'm going to call mine version 68 because I've got 1,000 of these. So, but anyway, and then to the right of that is a record button, and just click on record. Now, everything that you do in Photoshop until we stop the recording will build into an action. So you don't need to know programming. You don't need to do any of that. It's just whatever we do. So our first move is we're going to come over to our image, and we are going to add a hue saturation layer on top of where we are right now. So again, the adjustment layer, the circle at the bottom of your layers palette that's half black and half white, click on it and come up and just add hue saturation. And it'll put a hue saturation layer on there for you. Are we all good so far? Okay. We're going to add another adjustment layer on top of this. So come back down to, again, the circle that's half black and half white. Click on it again. And in this case, you want to come down. It's a tricky one to get to if your menu doesn't go ahead and come all the way out. It's this selective color. It's the very first one on top when you click on that selected menu. So it's called selective color. I want you to go ahead and click on that. So did everybody have in the properties panel, you should see something that says selective color. Are we good on this part? Okay. So there's a drop-down menu under selective that's just colors. By default, it starts with reds, and that's fine. That's where we want to start. So what we're going to do, the only slider I want you to touch in this at all is the black slider. So you're going to take the black slider that's at the very bottom, and you're going to drag it all the way to the right. And you'll notice that if you look at her skin tone, you'll see her skin just got dirty. This is a tool that was never meant to do what we're doing with it. This was a tool that was designed for people who were on a CMYK press to control the amount of inks that would hit any given plate. So what we just said was that for this would be the cyan plate, because again, we're changing red, complement of red is cyan. In changing that, we are going to flood the red with black ink. So that's what we're doing to this image. We're taking all the reds in here and we're flooding it with black ink. We're making it black. Now, where you have a pure red, it will be pure black. But we don't have, again, in her skin tone, those are not all pure reds. So you'll see it gets dirty, but we're going to continue this process. So then you're going to go to the very next color down. So click on the color drop-down menu and come down to yellows and take the black slider and drag it all the way to the right. The next one down, greens, and drag the black slider all the way to the right. Again, we're filling all of these colors with black. Cyans drag that all the way to the right. Blues, drag the black slider all the way to the right. The magentas, drag the black slider all the way to the right. The whites, which are our highlights, drag black slider all the way to the right. The neutrals, drag the black slider all the way to the right. And then finally, the blacks, and drag the black slider all the way to the right. Now, you will have one of two things. You will either have a solid black image, or you will have this thing that looks solarized. If you have the thing that's solarized, you want to make sure that the radio button is clicked to absolute, not relative. If you have a black image, you're done. The radio button will have already been absolute. So does everybody have a black image? Are we good? Okay, then come back over to your actions palette, and you'll see that there's a little red button at the bottom. That's the button that is saying you're recording right now. If you click on the square, the little white square that's just to the left of it, you stop recording and your action is now complete. So if you then take a look at the thing we just made, you will see that there is a 0 selective color. Mine says version 68. And underneath it, nested in it, are all the actions that we just did. We made an adjustment layer, we made another adjustment layer, and then we set that current adjustment layer. That's what we just did. To see if it works, throw away both of those adjustment layers that we just added. And then when you want to run an action, you do not click on the first step. You actually click on the container, the holder of it. So the select 0 color, you want to select on that. And then if you look at the bottom of your actions palette, there's an arrow icon right in the middle that points to the right. Click on that and it runs the action for you. So all of that work that we just did, it made it for you. Now in my case, I end up with the solarized image. Again, this is a very old tool that we're using, not actions, but this selective color. So it's a little wonky. If this happened to you, don't worry about it. Just click on the absolute radio button and you've got the black image. But this way you don't have to do this over and over and over again. Yes?
Can you please do that again where you, after you pause the recording to get it back?
No, I stopped the recording.
Oh.
So again, now here, I'll throw them away. So throw both of the adjustment layers away. So then in your actions palette, we are looking for your 0 selected color. Ooh, you have a lot of actions in yours. Just go all the way up, stop, go back up again. Start to work your way down, going down, going down, going down. Click the top one, and then just click that little button that points to the right, and it's done.
Okay.
So would you rather have that done, or would you rather do those stupid little sliders every single time you make this thing? How annoying. So anyway, I'm going to run mine again really quick. Again, it's going to select the wrong radio button, so just click on absolute if it gets you the wrong one. So does everybody have a black screen right now? Are we good on this part? Okay. I'm going to turn both of these off for a second. If we wanted to knock this girl out, take a look at the channel. So I'm going to take a look at the red channel. Make sure that you've selected the background layer and then click on the red channel. So the red channel, this is not going to be really good for me to, again, I'm trying to separate the girl from the background. I want to put her on a white background. So I'm just separating it here, not very good. If I click on the green, it's better, but it's not great. And then if I click on the blue, it's worse. So the green was still the best, but that's a long way to go still. This is not going to be the ideal knockout. I just want to make sure that you guys see that part. Scroll all the way back up to the top, select the RGB channel up at the very top, and then turn both of these back on. So I've turned both of the adjustment layers on. I got the black layer. So then what I want you to do is select the top one, the selective color layer, and then I want you to go to the, I've selected my mask really quickly. Make sure that you're selecting the adjustment layer, the adjustment, the adjustment layer part, not the mask. If you select the mask, you only can control the mask. I want to go back and actually change the adjustments that I've made here. So back on that properties panel, click your drop-down menu, and you want to come down to greens, and then you want to take this black slider from all the way to the right side, all the way to the left. So now what I've actually done is I've said I want to now flood the greens with white ink. When you pull to the right, you're flooding with black ink. If you zero out in the middle, you're not flooding, you're not adding any ink at all. But this is, again, the idea of white ink is a very odd concept, but in Photoshop, it's just a number. It's the opposite of black. So does that make sense? So we have now just we've flooded our greens with black. I'm sorry, with white. However, this is not really a great mask to work with yet either. And the problem that I've got, if you temporarily turn this thing off, turn the eyeball on and off, it's green, but it's not a pure green. If it was a pure green, I would actually my mask would be much more successful, or the mask that I'm trying to make, right? How can I make this more pure green? Say what? I'm sorry?
With the hue saturation.
Exactly. That's why I put a hue saturation layer down there first. So if you click on the hue saturation layer that's underneath it, at the very top there is a hand with little arrows pointing right and left. That is the targeting adjustment tool. Click on that tool, come over to this green background, and you'll see you get a little eyedropper. If you click on this eyedropper and you'll get that same little hand icon with the arrow going right and left. Drag to the right, it saturates your green. Drag to the left, it desaturates your green. So in our case, we are going to saturate our green, but we can't hit it this hard. Does that make sense what's going on? So I'm going to zero this back out again. Simply double click on it. It will zero back out. Go ahead and turn on the selective color layer above. So even though this now looks like a black and white image, Photoshop understands that there's color underneath this. So if you now, again, with that middle hue saturation layer selected, click on the targeting adjustment tool, come over onto your image, click and drag, you'll see because I'm saturating the color more, this thing is having a stronger impact on this image. But there's a problem. If you zoom into this girl's head, you will see that the spill that is in her hair has actually started to take over. This is not recoverable. So we need to back that saturation off. We've gone too far. So again, still using the targeting adjustment tool, I'm simply going to click on the green background, and I'm going to start to bring this back to the point that the hair that was gone lighter is actually darker. And so I'm going to zoom in here really tight on this. You can still see it's too light here. So I'm going to continue to bring mine down to the point that I don't have that white halo-y part. And so in my case, it brings it all the way down. I'm almost back at zero. I've got a +1 in here. So for this particular image, I can't use the saturation anymore. But this is still a much better place to start with. Are we good on this part? Okay, so I'm going to leave this at this. I'm going to come over to my channels palette now, and in my channels palette, I want to make, again, I just want to make a mask out of this to start. So you'll notice, and it's weird, again, this is another thing that no one can really explain, your RGB is a composite of all your red, green, and blue channels. And so your red, green, and blue channels are all identical. And if you've combined them and they're all identical, the RGB should be identical, but it is not. If you click on the red channel now, you'll see that the background actually gets lighter. In my case, there's a lag on this. Make sure that you've clicked also on your background layer, the very bottom layer, and then again, click on the red channel, and you'll see it actually gets lighter. If you go back to your RGB one, it's darker. If you go to your red one, it's lighter. It doesn't matter which of these we copy now. The red, green, and the blue are all identical. So it doesn't matter which one we copy. I'm just going to grab the blue channel and drag down to the square at the bottom with a little plus in it to make a copy of it. And I now have a blue copy. I'm going to double click on this and I'm going to call it Knockout and say OK. And then I'm going to do what we've always done. First off, I'm going to get rid of these two adjustment layers. They've done their work. I don't need them anymore. You can throw them away. I'm going to go to the bottom of my channels palette and click on Knockout. I'm going to then grab my color sampler tool. I'm going to put one sample right in the middle of this girl's head. She's going to be black. And then the next one on the background here, I'm going to then change my eyedropper tools to RGB color. Again, exactly what we did all day today. And
Sorry, if I get rid of the two layers at the top, it's still green.
it should be.
Well, sorry, it's not still green. I think I'm just having a hard time.
That's okay, you're fine. You're exactly where you need to be. Scroll all the way down. Copy, you're on knockout, click on that. That's exactly where you want to be.
Okay, but when I get rid of these, it does that.
Keep getting rid of the other one. And now select the bottom again.
Okay, thank you.
It's okay. It's a long day, I understand. Okay, Command L to bring up the levels dialog box. Guys, we're almost home. With the levels dialog box, you can see that you just grab the white slider. The figure's already black. Grab the white point slider and start to drag towards the middle. I'm just looking at my readout, my number 2 point right here, and I'm just looking at the readout. I want to get close to 255, but I want to stop short of that. I'm at 254, go to my arrow keys, tap in, then use your preview button, check to turn this on and off. I'm keeping really good fine hair in there. That part's all looking good to me. I'm gonna zip back out to see what else I've got going on in here. Everything is looking pretty good to me. I've got a lot of spill that's happening now in her body. So my number 1 point, you can see, you can see there's all this contamination in this sweater. You can see that in the projector screen even. So I just need to move my number 1 point that's in the middle of her head. Hover over the number 1 point, hold down your shift key. It will temporarily give you a little icon mover and bring it down, and I'm gonna put it down right by her armpit in that lighter area. And now you can see I've got a much lighter tone, so now I can grab my black point slider and push this up to get close to black, go to my arrow keys, and type in. So now I've got, for the most part, a pretty black figure. There's a couple of things that are on, because it's got sparkles in it. There's a couple of things that are on there, but I'm good enough here. I feel good about this, so I'm gonna go ahead and say okay to this. And then we're just gonna see how well we did on this, guys. So I'm gonna double click. I don't have her feet knocked out. I would use the pen tool to do this and then just get rid of the floor that she's standing on, and I would be done. Make sense? But we're running out of time, so I want to finish this last part. We're just going to do it right now. I'm going to add a solid color on top of this, just like I want to put her on a white background. So again, I'm going to simply click on my adjustment layer and say solid color, and it opens up. It's got this like yellow color. I don't want that color, so I'm just going to use the picker to come over and click on my background color that is white, or type in 255, 255, 255, and say okay to that. Then I'm going to come back to my background. So now I've got a whole white image. I'm going to come back to my background layer and make a copy of it, Command J. I'm going to drag the copy up on top of my white background layer. And now all I need to do is add the layer mask. So I'm going to hover over my knockout in the channels palette, hold down the Command key, click to load her as a selection, come back over to the top part of it and add it as a layer mask. And again, typical of me, she's inverted, so simply invert the layer mask, Command I, and I've now knocked this girl out. And how simple was that?
Nice.
Now, I do have spill on this, and you'll notice this is a smart object. I cannot remove spill on a smart object. So there's a number of tricks you could do about this, but since I've already got the virgin down here, I'm not worried about this. So I'm simply going to go up to my layers palette, down to smart objects, down to rasterize that layer. So now that I can paint on it, I'm going to go to my tablet and turn it on. And I'm going to start to remove spill. So I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. Make sure that the blending mode of your brush is color. Make sure that it is a completely soft brush. Mine is. I'm going to go ahead and leave mine at 100% opacity, 100% flow. I'm going to start on the right side of this girl's head. So now you can see we can't just, the colors that we're going to sample now have to change, because there's blonde hair, there's brown hair, there's darker hair. So with your finger on the option key, click, and I'm going to sample a color of brown hair, and I'm just going to start to paint along this line. Stop and resample. The more you resample, the more organic your hair your hair will actually be. So I'm going to come and pick another sample down in here, and I'm going to get rid of all of that. More of a blondish hair here to get rid of that. This will be the same, that sort of blonde color in there. In her neck, this area right in here, you've got to zip in really close, make your brush extremely small, and then sample color hair that's right around this, to get rid of that part and this part as well. For the hair that's along her shoulder, you don't want to sample skin tone. You want to still actually use the blonde hair that we had before. But to go over on her other side, like I'll say, so I'm just going to go over because, again, we just ran out of time. So 1 second left. There's a spill on the side of her face on the other side that we need to actually get rid of. So you would sample the color of skin that's really close to that and then run it along. But you see when you do that, it's too strong. It makes it, it's hitting it way too hard. So I don't want that to happen. It's also picked up this color of makeup, and I don't want to bring that down into this area that's down in here. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that, and instead I'm going to drop my flow down. And I'm going to bring my flow down to around 15, 19, 20%, something like that. I'm going to start down here, sample the color of her skin, and just sort of work my way along. It's still too strong. Command Z to undo that. Bring my flow down even more to like a 5 or a 6, 7, something like that in there, and then try again. And now you can see I can work my way up in here. I feel like my brush is still really hard, but it's not. Make my brush a little bit larger and just get rid of the spill here. And you're off to the races. Questions about this?
Like, even though I'm trying to sample the color, it's still turning everything gray. Not like that. The color that I'm trying to sample. Like if I click this,
Yeah. No, it's gray, but again, this is hair that you don't want to fix. That hair is the correct hair color. You only want to go after the green. That's what I kept saying. You can't go after something that's not right.
so I would sample from here.
So you're also on your mask. That's why you're only getting color. Select that. Now hold down your Option key and click this guy. And you can do a bigger brush now. You can do a big enough one to cover all of this. But again, don't change the hair because you need it. Work your way in like this. You can let go of the Option key now because you've got the color. Actually, white is now your foreground color. Hit the X key to get your color. Oh, you didn't rasterize your layer, so this is doing it on a brand new layer, which is not set. So click on this, layer, down to Smart Objects, down to rasterize. And now, hover over this, sample the color. Perfect. You're good there. It is set to color. Is it a soft brush? Okay, fine. And then just start to spill out.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. Questions about this?
Yes, here's this.
Oh, thanks.
Yes.
Then I'll see you guys next week.